Ladies and gentlemen, on this wonderful and beautiful day, we are currently recording this on a Tuesday night, my time, where the Los Angeles Lakers are going to be playing their very first Western Conference Finals game tonight, hoping for some LeBron James greatness. But we are not here for King James, ladies and gentlemen. Instead, we are here to discuss something not only very special to the individuals within our community who've been waiting for this, but this is something very special to me as an individual who's been a fan of the good brother here for a very, very long time. And so I've been looking forward to this, I would dare say, longer than maybe I've had this channel. I think I've known AJ since I had the old channel. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is without further ado, the man, the myth, the legend, Twitch.tv in the building. AJ, aka Alexander, what is going on, my brother?
How's it going, dude? Thank you so much for having me. Not sure I can live up to that incredible introduction, but we'll do our best. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, no, man, absolutely, bro. And let me tell you something. Your taste is impeccable. Even before before we started recording, we talked about a few different things. Just in regards to, Squaresoft and their incredible catalog of stuff. Yumi Neku no Naku Koro ni Monogatari. I mean, it's just, you have incredible taste, man. And in that same, talking about stuff we've experienced and the things that we love in stories, because I know that's something that a lot of comments came in to ask you about, and that's something that I have a personal question for. Starting us off, before we head into the One Piece stuff, my first question to you would be, what is that first series that, or I should say the first few series that really formed the Alexander, the AJ that we know today? Because, like, for me, for example, it's Final Fantasy VII One Piece that really opened my eyes to, like, man, this stuff is incredible. There's more to this than what I initially thought. And my question to you is, what are those stories for you?
Great question. I love that question. There have been a couple throughout my life that affected me like that in different ways. I think the first time I started caring about stories at all was Paper Mario 64, like the first Paper Mario for the N64.
Great game.
I love it to this day. I consider it like my childhood fairy tale. So that's the first time I found myself immersed in video game stories, whatever. So that would definitely be a really formative one. But then further down the line, Final Fantasy VI was my first ever proper JRPG with a fully fleshed out story outside of like Pokemon. So that was huge for me as well. So Final Fantasy VI was really big. And then in terms of anime and manga, there are two or three. So Attack on Titan was my first ever one. And I actually grew into loving it. I wasn't in love with it at first. I now am. Fate Zero is actually the first series, the Ufotable adaptation, where I properly started thinking about characters and trying to analyze characters and understand their motivations and psychologies, because I think that story is just a great, wonderful character piece. And then Hunter x Hunter. Hunter x Hunter is the reason. Hunter x Hunter and Fate Zero are the reasons I started a YouTube channel. And Fate Zero was my first video, but Hunter x Hunter was, I think, the reason I continued to pursue it. And to this day, it's my favorite story of all time. So those are a handful that I think are super influential, and I continue to find more to this day, which I'm really lucky about.
Yeah, and that's all part of the journey, right? Is trying to find those new and unique experiences, or like you said earlier in regards to Attack on Titan, I had a very similar experience with Attack on Titan. I didn't appreciate Attack on Titan until I went through it again, where there's a few stories where on a rewatch you'll find, well, actually I would dare say almost all of them, or at the very least the ones that mean a lot to you, that on a rewatch and a replay and a reread, you'll find something that may not have connected with you originally for whatever reason, right? There's, whether it's what we're going through, whether our tastes are evolving, whatever the case may be, there are definitely those types of stories. And so for us to still be on this journey all these years later, still finding brand new things to talk about, and we're here to talk about one of yours. We're here to talk about a brand new experience that you have been on for the past, what has it been, like a year now, right?
A little over a year, like a year and a couple months, something like that.
Man, and it's gone by in like a blink of an eye. It's crazy how
Yep.
fast it's gone. But in the same line of thought, there was a lot of questions that came in regards to your thoughts on One Piece before you got into it and compared to they are now. And I just want to put a bigger umbrella on that because obviously whenever I first got into anime and manga, it was through Naruto, Bleach, and One Piece. And so my intrigue in your journey has been like tripled, considering that your first experience with one of the big three in its at the very least going through more than just a couple of chapters, a couple episodes, has been One Piece, which most of the time people start with Naruto or Bleach.
Huh.
So my question to you is, how has the now that you've started all three of them, how has the experience been compared to your expectations for all three series?
Yeah, so with basically all of them, what I tend to do is, it's taken me a few years to be able to do this, but I think just for my enjoyment of different types of media, I've been able to pretty easily shut out hype and expectations from the anime community, Twitter,
Right.
Whatever, and just go like, everyone's different.
Right.
A lot of the time I have really, I have taste that really aligns with the consensus, but a lot of times I have hotter takes and don't like things that people love or love things that people don't like. So I just kind of was able to internalize that hype doesn't really mean much for my experience, so try not to buy into it. And eventually I've been able to do it. So what I always say is high hopes but tempered expectations with anything basically, unless it's like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, where I've seen part 1 and I love it and I'm really trusting in part 2, you know?
Yeah.
So that's what I tend to do. With these ones, it's been pretty much that, but my expectations were tempered in that I didn't expect them to be masterpieces, because I think I just don't like to do that right off the bat. But I did expect them to be good. Like, there was no way that these series could gather such acclaim if they're awful. And who knows, maybe I would have a hot take and didn't like them, or wouldn't like them. But that was pretty much what I expected. I thought they'd be good. Any higher than that, to me, would have been a bonus. And that's kind of how I went into all of them. So when people say, like, has One Piece lived up to your expectation? Yeah, and in some cases, definitely above it, which is great. And I'd say the same for the other two as well, actually.
Man, I'm so glad to hear that, because like I was saying before, and I'm so glad that you brought up what you said earlier. Now, your love for Twilight Princess makes so much sense to me for what you said, because we're very similar in that regard for blocking out what other individuals are saying about a certain thing, because we both know how Twilight Princess was received when it was first initially released. That turned a lot of people away from that video game, and so to now I definitely understand why we're very similar in regards to that. Actually, speaking of that, dude, Twilight Princess, man, talk to me about that. What I've seen your analysis content on it, but for the individuals who are not familiar with your love for that game, just talk to me about like what it is about that game that is so special to you.
Yeah, actually, I mentioned formative games a few minutes ago. That's one I missed. That's a huge one for me. It was my first, well, it was my second Zelda, but the first one that I really properly loved, and to this day, it's my favorite. I just think one, I love characters. I love character writing, and I think it, in my opinion, has my favorite character writing in the series. But aside from that, I think people like to rag on it for being lacking in identity and too similar to Ocarina of Time, or not different enough, and just kind of being a revamp of a lot of the things that people love about Ocarina of Time while not having its own identity. But I personally think, which I describe better in my video, so I'll be ad-libbing a bit, but I think that the things that it does thematically are kind of conducive to that sort of thing. It it is not evolution, it's revolution. Sorry, it's not revolution, it's evolution.
Right.
The thematics, it is called literally Twilight Princess. One of the first lines in the game, if not the first, it talks about a strange sadness when dusk falls, and that in-between moment. So for me, Twilight Princess marks, for me personally, a big stepping stone in my life for a bunch of personal reasons, while also being, I think, that in-between moment for the Zelda franchise. Because before it was Wind Waker, very stark, very bold. After it was Skyward Sword, same thing as well. Like that turned a lot of heads for kind of opposite reasons for Twilight Princess. And I think the story deals a lot with that in-between moment, that calm before the storm or in between storms. And I think it just communicates that really well, and the sort of trickle-down effects it can have on populace, the populace, in between times of war or strife, and how those times can be, and a lot of times, basically as difficult. And it just spoke to me a lot in that way.
Oh man, dude! Once again, like, see, actually being able to talk to you about this, because like I said, I've watched that analysis. As a matter of fact, I watched it because I love watching or listening to video essays while I either play a game or I'm on the road driving, and I can't even tell you the amount of years that I've listened to on that. But that one is just such a special video because for me, with the video essays / YouTube content I love listening to is when a video game or an anime or a manga or a story really resonates with someone and they're able to articulate why that is the case. And I think you did a phenomenal job of doing that with that Twilight Princess video. And so for anyone who is a Legend of Zelda fan, who has played Twilight Princess, please go check out that video. It is an absolute masterpiece.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Oh, no, dude. 100%, man. And going back to what you were saying earlier about Hunter x Hunter, and, you know, and also something that you said in whenever you were going through both Thriller Bark and Sabaody. I recall during the beginning of Sabaody, you said something very interesting that actually opened my eyes to what it is about Oda and in that particular stretch that's so... it's so crazy because he does such a great job of this throughout the course of the series, but especially at that point, when it comes to balancing tone and expectations, right? You said something around the lines of, in Thriller Bark, you go in and it looks horrifying on the outside, but on the inside, it's a very lighthearted journey and adventure. Sabaody is this theme park that looks like, man, I would love to go to it one day. But once you actually get into it, it is a terrible, terrible place. And so, what is it about these stories, like you were saying earlier with Twilight Princess, now with One Piece? How is it, do you think, that you got to this point where you're able to look at series through this lens while reacting to it? Parvision, shout out to Parvision, a fellow One Piece YouTuber. That was his question / comment to you. Is appreciation for the fact that you're able to analyze and reflect on certain things while you're reading it. Because oftentimes, you know, we have to take that moment of reflection after we read a chapter, but you're able to do that while reading a chapter. How do you think you got to that point?
That's a great question, and honestly, I'd like to know myself 100%, but I'll do my best. Firstly, I'm really glad that people enjoy my reactions in that way, and that I can bring things up in the moment that people that may open up a new avenue or anything like that.
Right.
I'm really glad that people can watch my streams and feel that and experience that. But I also make a ton of mistakes. I forget things. We have an emote specifically on my channel, like with me with a clown mask.
It's a great emote. It's a great emote.
For when I mispredict things, or famously I forgot that Vivi was Miss Wednesday. Like it was great.
There was that one, and there was what was it? It was I'm trying to remember. There was another really good one. It was during Water 7. It was the Peeping Tom instead of the Puffing Tom. That was that was a fun clown emote moment.
Yep. There was also one of the most famous is on Jaya, the bird that shows the directions on Jaya. Robin subdued it with her power, with the arms. I thought that was Oda being really expressive and giving this bird like actual muscles. So that's probably the most famous. Yeah. So anyway, the point is, I do screw up a lot of the time. Like, and a lot of things I do sometimes are mistaken. Obviously, that's just always going to happen. But I think it's something that comes. In my mind, I think I'm kind of able. When I made YouTube videos, essentially my process has been people a lot of the time ask me my process from start to finish. It's always been the same. It's basically, how do you make a YouTube video? How do you write a script, record it, and then put it all together? Like, what's your aim? Basically, I experience a story. If I feel strongly about it, I never do content about, or very rarely do content about something I don't feel strongly about. But so if I do feel something strong for it, I think to myself, okay, I had a huge emotional reaction one way or another. Why? Like, what was it that really spoke to me? And sometimes it takes going through, rewatching episodes, rereading chapters, thinking a lot, maybe watching other series and cross-referencing things mentally.
Right.
And ultimately, the end point of a YouTube video is to be able to put that into words, why I love this story or this aspect of a story or this character or whatever. I think essentially what's going on with the streams is that over the years, I've been able to identify that quicker and much more efficiently. So I think, like, in my mind, I'm doing that just really fast as I go.
Gotcha.
Like, I look at Sabaody and I go, holy shit, this is really striking to me. And why is that? Well, we just watched we just read Thriller Bark. That was total opposite. Why exactly?
Right.
And it's just going on in my mind in the background. And a lot of times I voice it because I'm streaming. And sometimes it's really it leads me nowhere, and sometimes I get lucky or I get a cool observation. So it's essentially that process quickened up, just ongoing, a sort of ongoing thing.
I can tell you, there's a few times that you were so on point that it was scary throughout the first half of this of this journey, where I was like, man, like I'm trying to remember. It was whenever you were going through. I'm trying to remember which section of the story was, but basically it was whenever, I think it was Jaya and Skypiea, whenever we started going, which, by the way, I appreciate the time that you give to the cover stories. This is something that people who experienced the anime the first time, like I did, up until where I caught up to where the anime was, I didn't have the luxury of the cover stories, and there's a lot of people who don't have that. So when Sir Crocodile and Buggy and them all show up in Impel Down, that's a massive surprise. But Oda is setting that up through the cover stories. And so I remember there was this one particular cover story where it specifically states, like, Crocodile, Mr. One, they're all on the way to Impel Down. And you said something around the line. It was during Enies Lobby, if I'm not mistaken. Where you said something on the lines of, oh man, like, I wonder if we're going to go to Impel Down after this, because Enies Lobby is supposed to be, like, right next to it. And in the back of my head, I was like, yo, he just called it just a little off. Just a little off.
Yep.
It's a couple more arcs. And so, but yeah, no, like, and you don't have the what's that called, I know you have a lot of experience when it comes to anime, but when it comes to manga, you haven't read many manga, right? From what I've been able to gather.
No, it's only recently where I've been, like, in the past couple of years or so, where I've actually started properly enjoying manga. Like, prior to it, it was a sort of weird thing where I love an anime, read the manga because I was really invested in the story and want to see where it went, and I'd appreciate the manga, but not really fully immerse myself and enjoy it. Just, I don't know, something to do with the medium. I hadn't fully acclimatized to it yet. But luckily in the last couple of years, I've started properly enjoying manga. I have a couple of series to thank for that, I think. And One Piece is a part of it too. So yeah, not a ton of experience for sure, especially compared to how much anime I've seen. I'm kind of a baby when it comes to manga.
Oh man, that's really cool. That means we can expect some more manga stuff. And not on Twitch or anything, but just in regards to, like you were saying earlier, experiencing more stories. Then that's a brand new avenue now for you able to experience a lot more greatness in regards to the manga stuff. So that's really, really cool. Before we go into a lot more of the of the One Piece questions, I just have a few general stuff because while I have you here, it's I'm just like we were talking about earlier. I was first a fan, and now I'm glad to be able to call you a friend and an individual that I can speak to on a regular basis. And so, going back to Hunter x Hunter, bro. Obviously, Jing is the profile picture of my channel. That is a series that means so much to me. There's something that both Togashi and Oda do that every single time I go through both Hunter x Hunter and One Piece, it fascinates me, and that is I'm a big fan of episodic storytelling, and I feel like those two series do such a magnificent job of telling a greater story while keeping these small subsections for you to be able to go back to at any given point. Nisio Isima Monogatari is really good at this as well, where there are these particular sections, these arcs, where you can go back to with no, like, oh, I don't have to go rewatch Alabasta to go rewatch Skypiea. Instead, if I just want to rewatch Jaya and Skypiea, I can get an incredible experience out of that. And my question to you is, just recently you did a Hunter x Hunter ranking the arcs video, which was really, really cool. Would you ever want to do something like that whenever you finish One Piece, of course, catching up to it? Would you ever want to do something like that for One Piece?
Well, first of all, thank you for the kind words at the beginning of that. I also just want to toss in that it's a great pleasure of mine as well, because you're consistently, like, Twitter, the internet, YouTube, whatever. It can be an unfun place sometimes, and you've consistently been, even from before we started talking more, a source of positivity and enthusiasm and hype just consistently. And I think it, even when we aren't interacting, it just brightens my day to see a video or a reaction or a tweet. So people were asking, like, about collabs with One Piece, and it wasn't something I really thought much about, but you were the first one I thought of that I'd like to do it with because of that.
I appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Yeah, so it goes both ways for sure. So with the question, I actually think that would be a really good idea. I'd be very down for that. It would be a much longer video than the Hunter x Hunter one.
No question.
Definitely, and it might have to be in a different style. But I think it would be a great idea to do that sort of thing, to sort of mark catching up whenever I do.
Right.
Next year, whenever it happens. I'd definitely be down for that, because I think rather than the order necessarily, I think a lot of the interest in ranking things like that, in arcs like that, comes from why they're in the places they are.
Exactly.
Yeah, and what it can tell you about that person's taste and what they appreciate. So, some people say lists are just robotic, numbered bullet points. To me, I think it tells you so much about a person. And One Piece has been, and One Piece has been such a unique journey for me. And so I think to cap that off, that would be tons of fun to do. I'd definitely like to.
Oh, dude, that makes me so happy. And what you said is exactly right. One of my favorite things to do in regards to anything that I enjoy is to look at people's rankings for certain things. Like when it comes to Trails games, Final Fantasy games, One Piece arcs, Hunter x Hunter arcs, Monogatari arcs, or whatever the case may be. I really love that because, like you said, it not only tells you about the person, but it also tells you about what impacted them. Like I know you posted the other day about Mayoi Jiangshi. That is an arc that is within the grand scheme of Monogatari is not really as like loved as stuff like Ogi Dark or Hitagi End or something. But Mayoi Jiangshi is really, really important to me because of a certain dynamic that you've also discussed before. And so in that same regard, something like in Hunter x Hunter, for example, where York New City, if someone tells me, oh, they prefer York New over Chimera, I'm not going to argue with them in the slightest, because not only are they both phenomenal arcs, but that will tell me what you prefer within your stories, right? York New City, of course, does the classic Togashi thing of mixing certain genres and having it be an absolute masterclass, right? which York knew is very, very different than Chimera, or like Greed Island, which is very different from the other two. And in that same way, One Piece has these, like, I think it's now we're at 30 something, whatever, we're at 30 something, little miniature Disney Renaissance movies where I feel like no matter what you tell me, what order you have it in, I always love seeing the rankings because, like you said, it tells me what's important to the individual, what they value in this story, and what moments really stuck out to them. Because at the end of the day, some of these arcs, except for the ones that we've gone through a million times, because then we can really start digging into them on a more specific level. But for individuals who've only gone through the series once, a lot, like Enies Lobby to them is only the I Want to Live or the Merry Farewell. Marineford is the Ace and Whitebeard scenes, Shanks coming in to stop the war. Like, these major moments are like these snapshots in time for individuals who've only gone through a series once. And so arc rankings for me are like kind of your favorite moments captured through a thing as well. What are your thoughts overall on like the way that individuals like that, like Togashi, like Oda, are able to take these arcs and tell stories that are not only so different from each other, but can have an impact. Like for us two, that we're big Skypiea fans, and we understand there's people out there who do not like Skypiea, but we can understand that, yes, this arc is for me. It's not for you, but it most certainly is for me.
Yeah. I think something that I really have found fascinating with Hunter x Hunter, and that I also think is a similarity with One Piece, like a big element to their core writing philosophy, is that I've always described Hunter x Hunter, and I think this is the case with One Piece too, and a few other favorites, but just like a small handful, is that these series are kind of the writer's stream of consciousness. Like yes. they just have so many ideas and so many things to say, and they just, obviously it's very well structured and well written and thought out, but they just throw it out there, and their imagination is so vibrant and their ideas are so rich, and they communicate it so well through their characters and plot and all that it's so engaging. And obviously you have to be skilled to make those arcs engaging in a vacuum in and of themselves. Right. Skypiea as a self-contained story, etc. But it's something I discovered at the end of Hunter x Hunter, literally episode 148, that right at the end it was clear to me, is that is the detours idea, right? Right. Jing's detours idea. As a huge Jing fan, I'm sure you resonate with that a lot.
Absolutely.
It is this stream of consciousness idea, and these characters, our journey with them is a drop in the grand scheme of things. It's very minor. It's a drop into this grand expanse of these writers' minds and this world they've concocted, and I consider that to be a huge privilege. And the fact that they're able to do these sequential arcs that are self-contained, and yet I think when you look at it on a broad level, at the end of, like, I looked at One Piece post Timeskip in that way. I looked at Hunter x Hunter when I was finished the anime like that. You see that they have these similar tones or similar ideas that really only when you can't even appreciate that in the present, because these artists are so good at having you lose yourself in them in the moment. And right. It's honestly I'm just describing what I think is so great about them. I have no idea how they do it. It's just great when they communicate in that way. And I found that to be something over the years that I really love about stories. And when it comes to One Piece, I think it's a huge core element of it. So that's something I found myself attracted to pretty immediately. And with regards to, just a little side note, you were talking about like the moments that resonate with you. I find that so cool because I find that idea so cool because Marineford, when I read it, I love, for anyone who doesn't know, I'm the biggest Usopp fan. I love Usopp.
Okay.
I think Usopp is phenomenal. I think he's so up my alley. Water 7 and Enies Lobby is a huge Usopp arc, along with being a huge Robin arc, right, who's one of my favorites as well. So Water 7 and Enies Lobby, I consider that to be my favorite arc or saga of the story. And Skypiea was really close, and it was those two. But the moment I got to Marineford, I'm just like, no, this is my favorite. This is easily my favorite. Not that it's not that the other two I like any less. It's just it was so clearly appealing to my taste, despite the Usopp stuff, despite how Skypiea comes together so beautifully. And what I love about what you mentioned about the moments is that you mentioned the Whitebeard moment, the Whitebeard death, one of the best moments in like shonen for me.
100%.
He's one of those all-time characters for me. Ace's death, amazing. Like you said, Shanks coming to stop the war, one of my favorite moments in the whole story. But just as resonant to me was there's this tiny little look when Whitebeard is, gathering all his troops and going, we're going to storm them one last charge, something along those lines. And there's just a tiny panel where he looks down and his eyes are shadowed over and you can almost like feel him inhale. And that's just this moment of beautiful vulnerability to me. That human moment of the burden of being a symbol.
Yes.
And that to me is as good as anything else you said. So just 100%. With regards to the grander topic of moments that stick out to people, like that's just a great example of Oda being great at those little moments as well.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you brought that up because honestly, when it comes to Marineford, and this is something that because I experienced that first in the manga as well, in regards to. I know there's people that have experienced that arc both first in the anime and in the manga, which those are in One Piece. They're kind of two separate experiences, considering how for Marineford it's a phenomenal adaptation. So it's but still there's a little bit of censorship there. Regardless, it's still a phenomenal adaptation. But what's interesting to me is because the anime focuses on those little moments so much because of how it's often dragged out at times, how certain moments are given so much emphasis. Moments like the one you just stated, like whenever Whitebeard states, "I'm Whitebeard," and goes into battle, whenever he hugs Squard, that is a major moment for a lot of people. Like whenever they bring up why they love Marineford so much, sometimes you'll hear people bring up the Squard moment, or Luffy arriving to fight the Three Admirals, or when he frees Ace, or whenever Buggy's trolling in front of a TV and that comedic relief. It's like all these little moments that are emphasized both within those small little panels and shown more light in the anime. Those small moments, or Little Oars Jr. and what he went through in Marineford as well. It's like all those small moments, like you said, are really where Oda shines. And he has so many of them throughout the course of the story. I'm so glad you brought up Usopp because that was going to be one of my first questions to you. So now that we're getting right into the One Piece greatness, I guess I'm going to have quite a few questions here from both YouTube and Twitter. The first one is going to be an Usopp question. And it came in from, let me go ahead and bring up the questions here. It was, before we get to the Usopp question, I have to know this one now that we're talking about Marineford. I don't know, _03 says, top 3 funniest characters in One Piece.
Buggy?
Yep.
Probably, honestly, I think Usopp's probably in the top 3. He gets a lot of laughs out of me. So Buggy, Usopp, and honestly, this might be a bit of a weird one, but I actually find Zoro hilarious.
No, Zoro, he is funny.
Zoro just funny. He is this brilliant, beautiful, magnificent first mate or whatever role he has, and he checks Luffy and makes sure he's following his ideals and not straying, and he's so great for that. But he's such a goof too. Like he
is.
So I think Zoro might be in the conversation for that. He's the one that comes to mind at the moment.
Yeah, no, those are 3 great answers right there. I think besides Buggy to me is the obvious one, where like anytime I need a laugh, I open up a Buggy chapter because he's so good.
Yeah.
But Impel Down, that is a really, really, really funny arc. Considering what's happening around it, considering how intense that arc is, the Buggy, Mr. 3, and Luffy combo might be undefeated.
It was super good.
It was so funny, man. Like throughout the entire course, those interactions were incredible, both there and in Marineford. Those I feel like any answer is the right one, but Buggy's just so good. He's so good.
Yeah.
Actually, the Usopp question comes in from Alpha Moon, and he just this is how I knew Alpha Moon has been watching your stuff, and knows you so well, and says. Alpha Moon comes in and says, "Who's your favorite character and why is it Usopp?"
Well, he just from the start, it was really interesting to me because I think it's a natural thing for people when someone's experiencing one of their favorite stories, like a lot of people saw I was doing with One Piece. The natural inclination is to want people to get to the quote unquote good stuff or the best stuff.
Right.
And so I experienced a lot of downplaying of the early arcs. Syrup Village in particular, people are like, okay, this is not indicative of One Piece at its best. Just stick with it. We promise it gets better and whatever. I'm like, okay, that's totally fine. Like, if I do feel that way, that's totally fine. But I was so surprised by how much I enjoyed Syrup Village. I am a huge Syrup Village fan, and I think to where I am in the story, which is close to the end of Fishman Island, probably. It is one of the most thematically cohesive and poetic arcs in the series for me. The way it ties in Usopp's characters and the breadcrumbs we get throughout, his lies, his beautiful lies, what he does with Kaya and his trio, the crew, and his father, Yasop, and the little bit of a backstory we get, and how it all coalesces. I think you get the full picture of who this man is and who he wants to be. And I just think it's a great character-focused arc in that way. And then it not only shows you who Usopp is, but it also establishes, like I said, where he wants to go. And something I noticed about One Piece is that all the crew members have what I call an improbable dream. Something that others will say is impossible, but it's really not. Like, Skypiea shows that. Lots of people thought Skypiea, a city in the sky, would be impossible. Luffy wants to be the king of the pirates, find the One Piece. Sanji with the all blue. Nami with charting the whole ocean. Zoro being the strongest swordsman. But Usopp's goal is a bit more abstract. You can't really measure it. Nami, you chart the whole ocean, you'll know when, well, you could argue that, but when Zoro defeats everyone, you'll know he's number one. When Luffy finds the One Piece, whatever that is, you'll know he's achieved his dream. Usopp, what does brave mean? Like, that's very abstract. What are his standards for brave? Will they shift along the journey? It's a lot more abstract, and he felt immediately unique to me because of that. And I thought, okay, this is a character who I think his journey could be really, really cool and emotional if Oda ends up trying to make him this everyman to an extent, who fails and tries to be brave but is actually scared. But you can feel the progress, and it's very human and flawed and raw, to contrast the Monster Trio and their immense courage, for example. I think it's because of, and that's been carried out in full force, and Water 7 into Ennie's lobby is kind of an apex of that, and he continues past it as well. So it's been exactly what I wanted it to be. I think he's arguably one of, if not the most layered character, maybe one of them for sure. And I think he's one of the characters that Oda has the clearest idea of who he is. Oda has a clear idea of who everyone is, but like every bit just fits so perfectly with Usopp. And I love seeing him fail because that just makes his successes so much more gratifying. And so yeah, I love those sorts of characters who struggle, those struggler characters, across all sorts of media. And Usopp is one of my favorite examples, and I can't wait to see where he goes past this, because he said, I'm a brave warrior of the sea now, post Timeskip, and we immediately see he might say that, and he's buffed up and he's stronger, and that's clear, but he's still not like what you think of as a traditional brave warrior of the sea. He still gets scared, he still cowards out, and I love that about him. And
Me too.
So I'm just so invested in seeing what that endpoint will be. If he achieves that dream, like, when will he be satisfied? What does brave mean? And the journey to it is so gratifying for me.
Oh man, dude, yeah, you just put so much of that into in a way that that makes me so happy as a massive Usopp fan as well. He's a character that has never left my top 10 favorite characters. he's just he's just such a special character, and for all the reasons that you stated, and honestly, I'm so glad you said that Syrup Village thing. Syrup Village is that in Skypiea due to the anime, or at the very least in the early portions of the anime. The Syrup Village is the earliest example in the series of Toei stretching stuff out. So I think that's where a lot of people have problems with Syrup Village, because in the manga it is way like the pacing is much better in the manga than it is in the anime.
It's more efficient.
More efficient. So that might be one of the reasons why Syrup Village is so looked down upon, and it is right before the two major ones in Brautier and Arlong Park, right? But Syrup Village definitely has some really good moments there. Luffy has some phenomenal character moments in that arc. Like you said, Usopp's introduction, we're introduced to the Going Merry. It's a very important arc. Like, when if anyone out there says to skip Syrup Village or whatever, that's impossible.
No chance.
There's no chance. So on the same line of thought, and now that you've said that for Usopp, someone comes in. Let me see. It is. Right here, it is about your favorite non-straw hat, and it is coming in. Man, where I just had the question up. Where is it at? But anyways, while I find the person who asked the question, who's your favorite non-straw hat besides Whitebeard? They asked.
Oh, okay.
Because they already know how much you love Whitebeard.
That was easy. That was almost a really easy one. Okay, so at the end of every video I make, the discussion, I rank, at the end of every arc, I rank my top in an ever-increasing list. It's been 10, 15, 20. It's going to be 25 eventually. So I rank my favorites. So I'm just, I believe, and it feels right, it's very close between Vivi, Garp, and Shanks. And with Buggy pretty close behind as well. Okay. He can shoot up as soon as we get some more focus for him, he can shoot up. Some others I love are Smoker. I love Smoker. I really love Wiper from Skypiea.
Oh, such a great character.
He's so good. But in terms of my favorite, next to Whitebeard, I think it would be Shanks. I do want to stress, I adore both Vivi and Garp. Yeah. They're so amazing, both of them. Yeah. But I think it's got to be Shanks. And he has this tendency to just disappear for 100 chapters. Which I think is very actually fitting for the type of character he is as well. And whenever he comes in, he is just the most electric, magnetic character on screen, and he's always embodying all that One Piece is and all the great facets of it. In Chapter 1, which to this day is one of my favorite first chapters of anything, or like introductions to a story, I love Chapter 1. Shanks immediately caught my eye. I loved him. And every appearance since then has been so meaningful. And he'd kind of been like, I hadn't forgotten about him or anything, but I had, in all the insanity that is Marineford, I'd been thinking so much about Whitebeard and Ace and Garp and Luffy and all these other, and even like Kobe in Marineford and all these characters that have congregated. I did not expect Shanks to just come out of nowhere and do that.
Me neither, man.
Oh, it was just this insane, beautiful moment, and the idea that Kobe's stalling for those few seconds, these little acts all added up for Shanks to make it in time. There's so much there. That's one of my favorite ideas in the whole story. And he communicates it so well. And then not only that, but then a few chapters later the next chapter, I believe it is, where someone says, "Don't you want to see Luffy?" And he goes, essentially to the effect of course I want to see him, but I can't, because Luffy he is out. He is whatever state he's in. It's not anything close to what he desired to become in his promise with Shanks. And he says, "So I'd like to see him. I'd like to comfort him. I'd love to be there because he loves this boy, but." That would be breaking a promise. He will be ready. He has utmost faith in Luffy, in his ability to move past this loss, and he just knows he'll do it. So while it's so difficult right now, he will be ready eventually, and that's when we'll see each other. I believe he might have said in the New World. And there's just that's something that not everyone, I feel, will like, because it feels maybe mean. Luffy, this person who he's been like a role model for, a father figure for, he is in his lowest point of his entire life. Why aren't you going to comfort him or see him or talk to him? But One Piece is so heart over reason. These characters have such principles that they adhere to, and in a lot of cases, they are more important than their lives. Or there are a lot of ways in which we can apply our own morals and ideas to these characters because they're just different. So Luffy would have hated that. He would have hated it because if they would have met, the next time they met, he would have been a broken person. He wouldn't have had the chance to put himself back together. And Shanks realized that, and you just know it was enormously difficult for him to not go out to Luffy because he cares for him so much. But he realized it, and he made such a difficult choice that not like 98% of people won't understand, but he and Luffy do. So that meant so much to me, and I love that. And I also love the tribute to Ace and Whitebeard in the post-war section.
Oh, yes. I was just about to ask you about that.
Yeah. The line he has about it's okay to cry, but it's okay for men to cry. He says something about the idea of masculinity. But what is important is that after your tears are dry, you get up and keep going. And I know, and he knows that he can. He has so much faith in him. So all these ideas that he represents, it's just, they come together so beautifully whenever he shows up. Even if he's hardly in the story in terms of screen time, his presence is all over.
Dude, the entire time, like I said, if we're able to get the camera thing working, I was smiling from ear to ear. Like, I couldn't stop smiling because I'm one of the biggest Shanks fans on the planet. I think he's one of the coolest characters that's ever come out of Shonen Jump, because I've never seen a character that they're never there, but when they are, they have such a commanding presence that shifts the community. Like, I can tell you, the Shanks stopping the war scene has shown up in both manga and anime on so many people's top favorite moments list, and it's literally like Marineford has so many special moments, but that one, because it's Shanks, because it's the magnitude of the moment, because it is Kobe stopping a Kainu from potentially doing something that could be very, very drastic. It's like all of it was, and then Whitebeard's not there, Blackbeard we know just finished going crazy, Ace just died, Luffy's gone. It's like, who in the flying Flagnard is going to take care of the situation? And who else but Shanks?
Yeah.
The one dude we were not expecting. And what's crazy to me, I don't know if you've heard about this, but Oda, in an interview a couple of years ago, he was talking about certain moments that were both planned and not planned. And he was talking about some of the most iconic moments that were not planned, that he came up with the week of, due to some serendipitous, which to me is the coolest thing ever, because One Piece is all about serendipity, and to know the creative process on some of the most iconic moments is also serendipitous, some of the coolest stuff ever. So the Vivi farewell scene from Alabasta, that was serendipitous.
Really?
Oda did not plan that, or at the very least, from what he said, it was, I'm pretty sure in the middle of Alabasta, he was like, okay, that's how I'm going to end it. You know, it wasn't like he thought about that back in the beginning of Whiskey Peak or something. So that was serendipitous. The Shanks showing up to stop the war was not planned. Like so that to me, because it is so perfect, but he didn't plan that out. I was like, what? That, and then Roger being Ace's dad was not something that was planned out from the beginning either.
Really? Oh my gosh.
There was a few things that just make so much. Oh, and the supernovas. Oda came up with all the supernovas the week of.
I had heard of that one.
And so there's when I hear stuff like that, it almost makes me like wonder how Oda does this. Where, let's just say, right, he's just sitting at his desk. He thinks of this idea. I don't know, the supernovas, or Ace being Roger's son. Whenever in the world they come up with that idea. And I can just imagine when he should be working on the chapter, he probably turns over and like just starts writing these immense amount of notes of, oh, if I can do this, then I can do this, or I can do this, I can do this. It's like, it's just, like you said earlier, when it comes to Togashi and Oda, it really is stream of consciousness this is what I'm inspired by right now. These are all the ideas that are in my head. How can I put them all together? And it's like, to know some of the most iconic moments in the series were not planned out, but they fit so well, honestly makes me respect him as an author. I mean, bro, you know how difficult it is to write out some of these scripts on YouTube with just like with a bunch of revisions.
Yeah.
Could you imagine a story with this many complex layers and so many intricacies and all these little small details on a weekly basis, and some of the most iconic moments are not planned? It's like, what? It's crazy.
That's yeah. I didn't know about any of those except the supernova. Which I think someone had told me. But the Vivi moment, the Roger and Ace stuff, and that's crazy because one of my other favorite series, one of my favorites, Haikyuu, is a series that I think has tons of that element of sort of improvisation. And knowing, I think you can feel that in One Piece, even not knowing that those things were serendipitous, like you say. I think One Piece feels to me like they're very clearly plot elements and twists that are very, like, there are breadcrumbs, and Oda knows exactly what he wants to do with this character or this plot element. Right. And I think that's clear for a lot of the things that are carefully built up. But I think it's almost just as, if not more impressive, to be able to improvise these things within a week and have them fit so seamlessly, no holes. It makes everything more thematically powerful because it really indicates how immersed in that world and plot you are. The writer is. They have such an intimate knowledge of what works that they don't even have to spend a couple of months properly understanding if it fits into the 500 chapters prior.
Exactly.
That's super impressive, and I love that you told me that because I had no idea.
Yeah, no, especially the one that got to me the most was because the Roger Ace thing, I could see the Shanks stopping the war thing, even though earlier on in Marineford, they talked about how, like, Shanks was moving, stopping Kaido and stuff of that nature. It's like, oh, wow, so even maybe he thought of it then, I'm not sure, or maybe he thought of it that week of. Of course, we'll never know the truth, but the Vivi farewell one for me was the most shocking, because that to me is still one of my favorite arc conclusions. It's it's like the One Piece moment for me, where I just remember when I was first going through the series, and where when that episode came up, I believe that's episode 129, I just became a fan forever, where I was like, man, I didn't know an arc could end this good and tie everything together the way that it did. So to know that Oda potentially came up with that the week of, where he was just like, all right, how do I finish this thing? And and he's just, like you said, where he's so in tune with the Straw Hats, with Vivi, what would they do in this scenario? How would they react? How would they respond? I'm pretty sure a lot of the fandom at the time, where it was going on a weekly basis, everybody was like, oh, Vivi's joining. No one was expecting Robin to join, so it's like, oh, Vivi's joining. How do I stop Vivi? If maybe in his mind he was still thinking about it, like, do I have Vivi join? Do I not have her join? What would fit for her character? So I wonder what was going through Oda's head in that time. And I'm glad you brought up Vivi as one of your favorite characters earlier, because she's one of mine too. And it's not just because she's like an honorable. I'm not screw honorable. She is a Straw Hat. She's not.
Yeah. Sorry, can I just say something really quick?
Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm realizing as we talk about this, I said she was a non-Straw Hat. I've been saying throughout all my streams that she's not even honorable. She's a Straw Hat, like, for life.
Yeah.
So I contradicted myself. Forget it. Vivi's a Straw Hat. Garp and Shanks are my top two. Forget I said that. What a horrible thing I just said there.
Yeah, like, Vivi 100% is a Straw Hat, to the point to where in the anime she had her own eye catcher, which anybody who gets an eye catcher in the anime to me is a Straw Hat. And so, Vivi, Karu, obvious Chocobo, Final Fantasy stuff there. It's like her character is just so powerful, because that was the first time, and I was so early getting into anime and manga, or just stories in general at the time. I didn't really see a character like Vivi. I had seen, of course, she reminds me a lot of like a Garnet, right, from Final Fantasy IX, and or in regards to, like, you bring up characters like Dagger, you bring up characters like an Aerith, who is supposed to, like, have that princess type of role within 7, even though she's technically not. Or, like, whenever we think back to Final Fantasy VI with characters like Celis, there's certain, or even in 10 with Yuna, there's certain ways that I've seen the princess character be used in different ways, but Oda, for the first time, at least whenever I was going through One Piece for the first time, I was exposed to a princess character that was just purely a princess and was so cool at it. Like, she was just so... It took the stereotypical princess and just added every single possible really awesome thing to Vivi, where she starts off as a member of an enemy organization, ends up joining our crew. Even in other arcs, you see how dedicated she is to her people. Her people don't even have to be present, where she's like, nah, I have to get back home. I have to get back home. And even to other people that she just, like, came to know and love, like Nami, while trying to take care of her while she's sick in Drum Island, or, and also in Drum Island, whenever she has to tell Luffy, like, yo, if you don't bow your head, you know, you've got to realize there's certain, and that was a big learning moment for Luffy that we got to, not only just in that moment in Drum Island, but also in Water 7 too, where he learns to be more of a captain and stuff of that nature. But Vivi was one of the individuals that really started drilling that into his head. And to know that a character like that influences Straw Hats, a princess from an island where princesses and pirates are not normally supposed to get along, it's just the most Oda thing for them to not only get for them to not only get along, but for when the arc ends, we see her more as a pirate than we do a princess, even though she is the perfect princess.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to the point to where Vivi, at that point, I was like, yo, you can rule this country right now. That is how incredible you are as a ruler and leader. So I'm glad you brought up that Vivi stuff, because she is a phenomenal character.
Yeah.
One of Oda's best.
Yeah, I just to quickly add on to what you said, I love those learning moments for Luffy. There are, I don't know, a small handful, like 4 or 5 throughout the series that I think I point to as formative and pivotal moments where he learned from people that were wiser than him in one way or another. Because I hear people say sometimes that Luffy doesn't grow, and to me that's just not true at all. And I think that those are big indications of it. Those are the biggest moments. Like, he learns in a huge way from Jinbei or Iceberg, and Vivi was the first one to check him in that way and go, no, there are some things that are bigger than your idea of pride in this moment. Nami could die right now if you don't get your act together. And Luffy immediately, to his credit, goes, no, yeah, you're right. I'm totally wrong. And he takes it in and he ingrains it. And so I love that she was the impetus for that. She's just so heartfelt. She's just, like you say, such a great princess. She's so idealistic. The moment where she's screaming in Alabasta, stop fighting, the voice acting, the illustrations of the expression, it makes me tear up. It's so good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, man. It's that moment is really special. That's actually not really a controversial moment, but that's actually a moment that some people I remember when I first got into the community didn't really vibe with. But I'm glad that over time that is a moment that people have come to understand as a really special moment for Vivi, because that's kind of like her moment where, you know, Robin has her I want to live moment, Nami has her help me moment. In that regard, Vivi was just at bottom, at the lowest that she had been up until that point. Like, you have all these individuals, everything that she's been attempting to stop this whole time. That's the reason why she's been with the Straws from in the first place. And now, before it all gets to its absolute worst, everything's going great. But now it's like, no, it's worse than it's ever been. And Vivi's like, well, Luffy's not here. What am I supposed to do? I have to take matters into my own hands. And she's like, screw it. I'm just gonna yell. Like, somebody has to listen to me. Somebody's gonna and if nobody listens to me, they really have to get this out of my chest. And so that moment is so heartfelt, like you said, so pure, because Vivi's reaching into her soul and finally being honest with herself and being like, yo, I'm done. Like, everyone here needs to stop fighting, because if not, you're just going to tear each other apart. Like, why are we still doing this? And I love how we had those Kozo moments leading up to that, because it really goes to show that both... I love Koza as well.
Me too.
As another really nice character. There's a lot of really great side characters in Alabasta. But just in regards to those two, their dynamic is really special, and it added a lot of weight to that moment. Speaking of that, though, in regards to side characters, flashbacks, like we just talked about with Vivi and Koza, Radman, our boy Fiji, comes in and he asks for your favorite flashback and favorite flashback character, and then he puts the parentheses. Skypiea and Nolan are the only answers I'll be looking for and taking.
I get asked that question a decent amount, and it's always in flux. Okay, so I really, really love Bing Sake, Brooke's backstory.
Oh yeah,
It's
that's a great
so good. It's maybe the most emotional I've gotten watching the anime. I haven't watched.
one.
I watch highlight episodes at the end of arcs and things like that.
Right.
So I haven't watched a huge amount, but maybe the most emotional I've gotten. I do love Scott. Like that is, it's definitely in the conversation for my favorite, the Skypiea one. It's so encapsulating of hope and freedom and dreams and
Yes.
all that Skypiea is about. And Noland is such a great embodiment of kind of what Luffy embodies at the end of it when he rings the bell for everyone and for cricket and for all dreamers. I of course Robin's flashback is classic.
So special. Yeah.
I'm forgetting one. There's one that I always say. Who am I forgetting? It was kind of recent. Oh, Luffy's in post-war.
Oh, yeah. The ASL.
That one recontextualizes a lot of things about the series in chapter 1
does.
and Luffy himself.
Yep. Yep.
I think okay, so I'm gonna please Rodman Fiji with a caveat. So I think if I had to say one, I think it would be Skypiea. Bing Sake is super close, and same with the post-war flashback with Luffy. But I would have to say Skypiea, and I would say Nolan for flashback-specific characters. Also, Chopper's flashback is amazing. Drum Island.
Yes.
And Hiriluk's an honorable mention as a flashback-specific character. And Nolan is the winner as well. But seeing how Fishman Island plays out, that is one of the best backstories too. And when when I'm finished the whole thing, when I'm finished the whole arc, we might have a whole other two, because Fisher Tiger is phenomenal, and that backstory is amazing. So maybe it'll be a little different when I reflect on Fishman Island, but at the moment, I think he'll take my answer then.
Dude, Fisher Tiger and the Fishman Island flashback is really special. Really, really special. You can tell how long he wanted to draw Fishman Island and in particular that flashback, because there's so many bits and pieces of it scattered throughout the course of the story leading up to it. It's some really, really good stuff. But man, I'm so glad that you're also and I knew your answer was going to be Nolan and potentially the Skypiea one, because you brought it up earlier, but I love listening to your character rankings at the end of the arc analysis, and every time I heard like Wiper and Nolan at the end, I was like, he gets it, man. He gets it. And so those are really good characters. Honestly, actually, before we get to the next question, speaking of that particular flashback, there was something you brought up in one of the analysis. I believe it was in the Skypiea analysis that opened my eyes to. Because I know Oda is heavily inspired by a lot of different things, and whenever you brought up the Final Fantasy X thing with a third party coming in that hasn't been indoctrinated into this brand new world, right? And it got me thinking a lot about both Noland and the Straw Hats in that regard, because I take a lot of that stuff, the inspirations that Oda's had for the story, I take a lot of that seriously, because I strongly believe he's been inspired by Final Fantasies in the past, because I believe 6 is whether it be consciously or subconsciously, him doing the separation, and it really reminded me of the Searching for Friends section of Final Fantasy 6, and so whenever you brought up the comparison with 10, it opened my eyes, because let me give you a little bit of insight for my thought process on why it's one of the reasons why Skypiea and Jaya is such a special arc to me. So when Chapter 5, I believe it was Chapter 5 released. It was Chapter 5. when Chapter 5 released, that chapter is titled Pirate King and Master Swordsman. That is the lowest ranked chapter in the history of the series. It actually came in 10th in the table of contents. When One Piece first started, outside of Romance Dawn, it really didn't place that well. It placed okay, but there were certain chapters, especially that one, that did not place that well. And so the first chapter that placed well after Romance Dawn is a chapter called Incident at the Bar. And what I find most interesting about this is coming off of Alabasta in Japan was like the biggest arc since like the Cell Saga and Dragon Ball. It was just, everyone loved it. One Piece was the thing. Alabasta was like the coolest thing. Everyone, it was the jam. And if you weren't into One Piece with Alabasta, then from what I've been told, the boom was so huge in Japan that like basically that's really what got a bunch of people to start reading it in Japan. Because obviously in America it didn't really get popular until down the line. But Alabasta was so big in making One Piece popular. And so what I'm trying to get to is Oda finally tasting that success. We know how ambitious of an individual he is. He tastes what it feels like to be a Toriyama level success. And the very first arc that he writes after receiving this success is one that inspires others to chase their dreams as well, in Jaya and Skypiea. So in the stuff we were talking about earlier in regards to Oda, his inspirations, the things that he's thinking about, Jaya and Skypiea really does feel like a letter from Oda to all of his fans and to maybe the people who doubted him as well. Because like I said earlier, there has to be a reason why Luffy, Nami, and Zoro pop up in that bar scene specifically when those were the three individuals that were involved when One Piece was at its worst in regards to its sales, not its sales, but its table of contents. So the Bellamy stuff really does feel like a direct sort of meta thing where Oda's like, these three individuals, they weren't supposed to get to this point. Zoro and Luffy in that scene in particular, because of that chapter performing so badly, the Pirate King Master Swordsman chapter, they're the ones who get spit on, they're the ones who get punched when Bellamy's and his crew are going in, and they don't retaliate, they don't respond. And it really does feel like Oda telling the viewer, if you just stick through it, you don't have to speak. In a similar way to Shanks whenever he says in chapter 1 that it captures a lot of the themes of One Piece, you don't have to speak whenever somebody attacks you, but whenever somebody attacks one of your people, in the same way they did in Skypiea, or in Jaya, whenever he goes after Mumbai Cricket, that's whenever Luffy decides, all right, I've had enough of this guy. But when it comes to just him, he's like, now you can spit on me, you can do whatever you want. That's not going to matter because I know who I am, and that's why that Blackbeard scene directly after is so key, because Luffy is now, even though they are so different, as we've seen, the pie scene, and they're just different, but they're so similar. And Luffy, through Blackbeard, found another person who was like, oh, you're like Ace and Shanks, you get it. Like, you're a dreamer too. You're someone who's reaching for the top. And there's so much there that I feel like Oda was just, I can only imagine what was going through his head at the time. This is 2002, 2003. He's still relatively young, or really, really young at the time, but relatively young in regards to his life as a mangaka. So he's experiencing success for the first time. He's writing this arc. He's like, finally, I've made it, but what does success mean? What does it mean to chase your dreams? So this entire arc captures so many of One Piece's interests. It honestly is like it captures the One Piece series as a whole throughout in this one arc. And what I'm trying to get to is, when you brought up that Final Fantasy X comparison, it really started making me think about Oda's inspirations for telling his story, because Final Fantasy X came out in 2001, and I'm going to assume that maybe if he played it, that might have had there's a good possibility that it actually could have been a direct influence for what happens within Skypiea. And so I just wanted to get your thoughts on Jaya and Skypiea. Obviously, I know you love the arc as much as I do. And Sly, or no, it wasn't Sly. It was who brought it up? Someone said your thoughts on. I think it was Sorrow V. Yeah, Sorrow V says, did he like Skypiea? And I'll let you answer that question. Did you like Skypiea?
Yeah. That's a gigantic understatement. To this day, it's top 3, sometimes top 2. I did mention Marineford being my favorite, but Skypiea. And I also mentioned Syrup Village being one of the most thematically cohesive and poetic. Skypiea is the most thematically potent to me.
It is.
It's just there's so much there, and the way it comes together is just an all-time, not even just anime manga, but shonen moment when Luffy rings the bell. So it's one of my absolute favorite arcs in the series. It's a highlight among shonen. I loved it. It was so special to go through it. So, I love that. I love that context because I had no clue. I didn't know that at all. But that just makes it that much more personal and intimate, and I think powerful. It adds a whole new layer to it. That's incredible. Like, because I'm just going through that in my mind right now. Bellamy means a lot more. That bar scene, that spread of the bar of them all, them laughing at them. That's one of my favorite moments in the whole series. That's like One Piece in a nutshell. So that's wonderful, and thank you, because that adds another layer of appreciation for Jaya and Skypiea as a whole. I adore that. But with regards to the Final Fantasy stuff, I would honestly, I would be surprised if not, because I'm not going to spoil Final Fantasy X for anyone, but one of the primary themes is, well, two of them, is one, the improbable dream, like breaking through this, almost like this conditioning of hopelessness, and finding freedom, an element of freedom through that. And two, how truly difficult it is for anyone who's been born and bred and spent years in that sort of environment to stand up against it. It's just so hard. Someone could just go and say, why didn't anyone in Skypiea just follow their dreams? It's not that easy. Why didn't someone in Final Fantasy X just do it? You just can't. Like, there are so many complex psychological situations going on in environments like that. So that's why that third element is so necessary. It's in Final Fantasy X, just a fresh perspective. That element of perspective of someone who just makes you think, makes you just inhale, exhale, see the world for what it is, and go, things are hard, but again, they're not impossible, they're improbable. And that is such an all-encompassing theme that I think can apply to nearly anyone, any walk of life, any situation in your life that can apply to so many things. And it's done so powerfully in Skypiea. And knowing that Oda, I probably would have guessed with the visceral way in which it was communicated and how strongly it was communicated and how well, that Oda had some experience with it. But knowing that context, I think it makes it clear to me. Both for Final Fantasy X and for that. Those two things, I think, I wouldn't be surprised if they were a hugely happy marriage of circumstances.
Agreed.
Because I've been guessing throughout the series that Oda uses, I'm sure every storyteller does, uses their life circumstances or their mental state to influence their writing. Like Long Ring Long Land or the Foxy arc. It happens after Skypiea, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. It happens after this gigantic, epic, sprawling, dramatic, emotionally charged arc. I think Oda just needed a break. Like, I think he really just wanted to just have a relatively simpler arc, and it works.
A palate cleanser.
Yeah, palate cleanser. Yeah, it works for the audience. Because you can't just keep going with drama, emotions all the time, because it'll lose its potency. So I think for him and the audience, that was probably a factor, and so I think that it's very likely, given that context, that it affected Skypiea in that way.
Yeah, dude, and like you've said multiple times, and I'm so glad that you say it, because I've been saying it every chance that I get ever since I first entered our community. Is One Piece is an RPG. It is a JRPG. There is no way it's not. Whatever inspired Oda to create One Piece the way that it is. I know that the Shonen Jump formula is very JRPG, but One Piece in particular. If you were to put that and just replace the characters with like Cloud, Tifa, Barrett, that is literally a Final Fantasy. Is what One Piece is. So it's like the way that this series has been written up until this point just leads me to believe, and just knowing how Oda is, if Oda and Luffy are, because we know Luffy's heavily inspired by everything, right? We look back at the pinwheel from Arlong Park, where he came up with a move based on that. Or whenever he saw CP9 use the Soto abilities, he came up with Gear Second and how to become much faster. It's like, if Oda's the same way as Luffy, where he uses other individuals and what they do, and obviously for creatives, we all take stuff from everyone, all artists steal, but it's like, for him, I wonder how deep it goes. Like, when it comes to video games, music, movies, I know he's really big into Western cartoons. It's like all these little different things. I wonder how much of it is conscious or subconscious, but that those Final Fantasy things to me, and especially another really interesting, I don't know if anybody's ever told you this one, but I remember hearing a long time ago that Oda was speaking to his editors whenever Kuma was first introduced in Jaya, and he was like, that guy is gonna separate the Straw Hats someday. And so for him to have that plot element in his mind in, like, what was that, 2002, that lets me know subconsciously that searching for friends section from 6 was in his mind. if that is what has inspired him. Maybe it's just us, doing our connections to other media we've experienced, but it really does feel like a one of those obvious connections. But in the same line of thought, now that we're talking about Jaya and Skypiea, obviously Jaya is like Logetown, except on a much broader scale, where we're seeing returning characters, the world at its absolute largest. This Oda at the time was introducing a lot of elements that would become very important for the grand scheme of the story, because after Alabasta, in the original run of the series, Oda believed that it was only going to go on for a little while longer. So in Alabasta and Jai, he introduced a lot of things that would become important for the grand scheme. Blackbeard, the Gorosei, the Marijoa, the ancient weapons thanks to Crocodile, and introducing Robin, who leads into the Void Century and stuff of that nature. So a lot of really important things were introduced in this arc, and Mr. PK comes in and asks you about your thoughts on Oda, on the way that he reintroduces old characters and makes the world feel real through arcs like this.
Yeah, that's actually one of the most low-key and subtle but favorite things about the world. When I first started One Piece, one of the things that people would say to me is that the world building is its selling point. Like, there are great characters, the themes, the art can be fantastic, and all that sort of thing. But the world building is the selling point, and that led to an impression in my mind of, like, okay, this land's going to be gigantic. It must have to do with the sort of societal elements and the cultures and that sort of thing. But something that really surprised me, actually, and that I was pleasantly surprised about, is that element of it. Characters coming in always when it makes sense, never in a way that feels forced. And 9 out of 10 times, I can only think of just a couple at max where I felt like a character wasn't utilized to their fullest when they were brought back in. And so, like we talked about Shanks already. He's so sparsely used, but when he is, so much potency. Dragon, even more so. Like, that guy's one of the biggest, and he's getting a lot of substance lately, from where I am in the story. But for me to feel immersed in a setting, and for me to think the world building is truly great, I think it needs to, like I said, it needs to immerse me. And if the characters are in and out in a way that doesn't feel natural, that doesn't feel believable, it doesn't need to be super realistic, but it has to be believable and dialectic to the story and world that's proposed to us. And so that's one of the things I love most, because I think it's spot on. The Straw Hats being gone during one of the most important arcs in the series, well, 2 of them, Impel Down and Marineford, and Amazon Lily as well. Oda is not afraid at all to have these characters and establish them really well. Smoker, like I mentioned Smoker earlier, he has such a strong foundation set. He leaves such a strong impact right away. And then in Alabasta, he's absolutely wonderful. I love him in Alabasta. And then he's gone because he just simply isn't relevant to the plot we're following. That's also a good reason why cover stories are great because it just keep things ticking over for characters that might not be relevant to the plot on screen. But yeah, that element of Oda, he has such a keen sense and awareness of when it's right to put a character in, how much to use them, how much to keep us satisfied with them, while not, because I imagine there must be a huge temptation, like in Marineford, for example. Mihawk is back after being sparsely used as well. And he is, I don't know how fans think about Mihawk. I'm really out of the loop with regards to that. But for me, he's one of the hypest characters. I really like him. And if that's the, like, maybe if that's the case, Oda might have been thinking, there might have been a temptation, he's got to do some crazy stuff, like, because people are waiting for this. But he has he's used in moderation in Marineford. He doesn't do a huge, gigantic amount because that just wasn't the purpose. That wasn't his role. And that might upset some people who want more for those sorts of characters. But to me, it just shows this, like I said, such a keen sense of the world and the revolving, the living, breathing, organic collection of characters and what their roles are. And that just leads to the grand point of this being so much more than the sum of its parts. Like, it takes a lot of what's the word? I don't know which word I'm trying to use, but he has to hold himself back to to not make these characters have 10 characters have amazing moments in Marineford.
Exactly.
Because it would be too bloated, and he knows it's not great for the story. So I just really admire that ability of his.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. His patience is next level. Like, there's certain things that I know, if I were in his shoes, I would have most certainly, like you said, I would have taken Marineford. I'd be like, all right, Mihawk, it's your time. You haven't done anything for 500 something chapters. It's time for you, and all the other characters that he had there to do so many different things. And even with him using them in moderation, they still have some of the coolest moments, even if they're so small. Like Doflamingo's speech, we still, that's such an iconic moment, and it's only like 2 pages. It's extremely iconic. So for so many of those characters, it's like that. Speaking of Doflamingo, there was a question coming in from Valentine, who comes in, and the second part of the question was why I said Dofi. Says, which character is he excited to learn more about from later on? But it says in parentheses, besides Dofi. And then right next to that, a second part of that question is your top 3 antagonists so far. So top 3 antagonists so far in One Piece, and which character is he excited to learn more from, like more about in One Piece?
Okay, so top 3 would be Blackbeard, Sir Crocodile, if he still counts. He was kind of a
definitely
deuteragonist, but I still think he counts as one. And who would be after that? I have a lot of love for, I think, characters that I think are maybe more underappreciated just from the little bit I've been exposed to. I think Spandam's great. I think Moria's great. But for the last one, honestly, unless I'm forgetting someone, I think it might be Baron Omatsuri from the movie 6.
Oh man, dude!
I think he's absolutely wonderful, beautifully voiced. Yes. That movie is really great.
It's a phenomenal.
And the use of the direction and imagery to really nail home his despair and make him this foil to Luffy, I think is wonderful. So those would probably be my top 3. Sorry, what was the other question?
Oh, which character are you excited to learn more about here heading into the post time skip?
Yeah. So now that we're with the Straw Hats, Jinbei would have been one of them. We're kind of with him now. Outside of Dofi, that's a good caveat because I would have said him. So Buggy.
Ooh, good answer.
I think Buggy.
Good answer.
Yeah, there are a bunch. Yeah. Like I think Sabo's alive. It hasn't been confirmed, but I think there were some lines of dialogue that pretty much confirmed it in my mind. So I'd love to see where he is. Kobe, I'd love to see. Blackbeard, obviously. Aokiji, one of the most interesting characters to me. What's going on with him and his new role? But I think Buggy, because we saw he's such a beautiful foil to Luffy, and this insane, bizarre charisma he has. We saw what he could do just as a natural byproduct of the person he was in Impel Down in this tiny, tiny amount of time without even trying for a good portion of it.
Yeah.
So, with his mindset on a more distinct goal pre-Timeskip, 2 years is an eternity for someone like that. So, I'm so excited to see what he's up to, what he's doing, what he's amassed. Him and Mr. 3 is such an unlikely partnership, but I'm really excited to see what they're up to. So I think the answer would be Buggy.
Oh man, those are two fantastic answers there. I was not expecting to say Baro no Matsuri. That is, how many of the movies have you seen so far?
Just the one, just the Baro no Matsuri, yeah.
Okay, that movie is really special. To this day, the most unique One Piece film, and I'm so glad that you pinpointed the visuals, because man, I still can't believe the creative liberties that they took with that movie. It's a really, really great one. So this next question is awesome. It's coming in from Sarah, and Sarah says favorite dynamics. It's two questions. Favorite dynamics and what characters he'd want to either interact more or interact at all. So I'm going to assume interacting more would be more like the ones we were just talking about, like with Mr. 3 and Buggy and stuff of that nature.
Right.
So favorite dynamics and what characters he'd want to interact more, interact at all. And then the second part, which I think is hilarious considering we were just talking about this, what's his favorite arc and why is it Syrup Village?
See, unfortunately, I'm going to have to disappoint Sarah because it's not my favorite arc. But I'm still one of its strongest soldiers, I promise. Yes. And yeah, my favorite arc's Marineford. Hopefully it'll be eclipsed. That would be really cool. But yeah, and then so favorite dynamics. There are a bunch of really awesome ones. We were talking a decent amount about Shanks and Luffy. That's one of my favorites. Yeah. Luffy and Usopp, one of my favorites. Luffy and Zoro. I love theirs. And a really low-key one, not sure it's one of my favorites, like absolute favorites, but one that I have a really soft spot for is Zoro and Usopp. I think it's been shown in the story that Zoro is much more intuitive and emotionally intelligent in a lot of moments for all the stupid things he can get into and say than I think a lot of people in universe and out give him credit for. And I think he's been slowly, gradually, there's been panels here and there of him watching Usopp trying his best to be brave, and Zoro as like the most prominent example of a brave warrior of the sea is kind of an ideal in that way through his courage and bravery. So I really love they have lots of fun, endearing dynamics and interactions, but I really love these sort of silent. The way in which Zoro silently watches over Usopp's progress. I've really enjoyed that so far. I hope it sort of continues. And like I said, it's been very underlying, so it's fine if it's not dwelt upon in huge doses, but I really like that. Zoro Sanji is great. Nami, Luffy, like Luffy and most crewmates. But one that's really cool is Luffy and Buggy. They are... Yeah. I think they're great foils of one another as well.
Agreed.
Mihawk says something during Marineford about he's not this immense threat because of his power or will even, or his perseverance. It's because he is like this force of nature that people can't help but be swept up in. And he just gathers people for his cause. That influence, that intangible. Buggy has the same thing. And goes with it in different directions. So I find it really cool to see, since Impel Down, I've been thinking about Buggy and Luffy a lot as a dynamic. They're one of my favorites. Blackbeard and Luffy, through the way in which they diverge.
So good.
The way in which they have so many similarities, but diverging key ways. Their different ideas about the One Piece and whether or not it exists and all that sort of thing. Whitebeard and Ace, obviously.
Oh, yeah. Special.
Just to name a few. Yeah, those would be... I listed off a ton there, but those would be a bunch.
All good ones.
And there was another part, which was... characters that I would be interested in seeing interact.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so this is a non-specific one, but, man, we're really in the Buggy theme. Buggy, wherever he's gone, whatever the type of person he is now, and someone of huge repute, someone fearsome, whether it be Buggy and Doflamingo, Buggy and Blackbeard, or a Kainu, or someone like that. I just want to see as a sort of like a yardstick for to see how far he's come, or what how his ideals may have changed or developed over time, and just kind of a yardstick for his progress. I'd be really interested in seeing Buggy with one of those really fearsome antagonistic figures.
Oh man, dude, great answers. Great answers. And in a similar line of thought in regards to the dynamics, Yasuo comes in and asks, "What is your favorite relationship in the Straw Hats and why?" And I feel like you touched upon it there a little bit with a few of them, but if you could just give one, what do you think is your favorite relationship within the Straw Hats?
Yeah, I think it's Luffy and Usopp. I think it has to be.
Yeah, that's a special one.
It's so special, and not only just for I think I kind of first started clocking how special it was to me during Alabasta in the fight with Chopper's watching on, and Usopp's told that Luffy's dead. I think it's against Mrs. Merry Christmas or something.
Yes.
And he is just dead on his feet, but still protecting his friend's dream after being told that he's been killed, and who knows what's going on. That is when I first started going, there's something really special here. And it just continued and continued. And Water 7, their fight, it's just there's so much. There's nothing as emotionally powerful between two characters, aside from maybe Shanks and Luffy. But this has the longevity, like the screen presence.
Right.
And again, Luffy, in a similar way that Zoro must be an ideal, Luffy's an ideal for Usopp, and to stand up for him in the way against him in the way he did, his own insecurities about leaving Mary behind and projecting himself onto Mary.
Exactly.
And his fear and insecurity of Luffy leaving him behind because am I useful? And Luffy ultimately not even for a second thinking that, but nonetheless these respecting his wish to fight it out. And then that last conclusion of Usopp apologizing and the whole crew not hearing his excuses because Zoro says the first thing that comes out of his mouth, we only take him back if he apologizes.
That's right.
And they're just not hearing it until he finally says it, and then Luffy stretching out his arm across the shore, grabbing him and going, welcome back. It's almost like a self-contained character arc between the two characters up until the end of Ennie's lobby, and then continues forward. And it's so rich, it's so emotional. So that's my favorite.
Now that you just brought that up, I have to ask, because I really love this fight. Now, obviously, you brought up one of the best in Luffy versus Usopp. But Usopp versus Perona, that is in Thriller Bark. That is a really, really cool, honestly... something I really love about Thriller Bark is how Oda emphasizes the weak trio in there. Like Nami, Chopper, and Usopp get a lot of screen time there. But Usopp in particular, because of the nature of the island, you knew it was going to be a really, really fun one for him. But what did you think about Usopp versus Perona? Because that is one that I still love to this day for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah, I think I really do enjoy that fight. And actually, I read it and I'm like, this is really cool. This is awesome. Some things were pointed out to me that made me further appreciate it. And it's one of those ones that I think, the more I think about it, the more I like it. It's really subtextually rich, and there's a lot of cool elements going on there because, one, it's just really funny. Usopp's secret weapon being that he's already extremely negative. That's just hilarious. That's part of one of the big reasons why he's one of the funniest characters. But genuinely, also, there's something quite profound with that because his perspective, this sort of everyman perspective, there are some things that you can only see from the ground level, and knowing what it means to be scared, just like Chopper and Nami as well, is a really valuable perspective in for a bunch of reasons. And it ended up being a literal positive in this fight. But I think it's got a really cool tone to it, because Oda's not afraid to make it, keeping in line with most of Thriller Bark, very lighthearted, very silly in moments, and yet still baking lots of character work into it and substance, because we just had this gigantic arc of growth and leaving and rejoining for Usopp, for the crew. So, like, what's he gonna do now? How is he gonna... I wanted something for him, and this shows why only someone like him could be such an asset to the Straw Hats in ways that only he specifically could. The way that Sanji kind of said to him, only you can save Robin in Eni's lobby. Same sort of thing here. Only he could have beaten Perona there. Using the things that he learns outside of Soga King, in the absence of Soga King, without having to project that. So I think it's a great mix of funny and yet lots of richness baked into the details. Cool powers, cool problem solving from Usopp, and just generally a great demonstration of his character. That, at the moment, I can definitely count it among the highlights of Thriller Bark for me.
Definitely, and I'm so glad that you broke it down like that. I really love that moment with Sanji and Usopp in Water 7. It's one of the ones I think about the most in regards to the themes of One Piece. Things that only you can do. Luffy talks about that in Arlong Park, where he's like, I can't lie, I can't cook, I can't navigate, do any of this stuff, but one thing I can do is whoop you. And I think that's one of the coolest Luffy moments, because he understands from the very beginning of the series what his role is, right? Like, he knows he has to get other people on his ship because he can't do everything. And that's something that's really hard for a lot of people to accept. I know I'm one of those people that I want to do everything myself. But Luffy is the type of person where he's headstrong. He what he wants, he obviously is gonna get. But he understands it's gonna require people who can only do what they can do. And whenever he invites Usopp onto the crew, it's not just as his friend, as this individual that he loves spending time with. It's because he finds value in the one thing that maybe Usopp himself sees as a flaw, which is his ability to lie.
Yeah.
And I just think that's so cool. Like that like you said earlier with their relationship, that how they accompany each other like that. Luffy finds value in Usopp, and Usopp obviously finds value in Luffy as well. And it's so good. And on that same line of thought, someone asked what your favorite themes in this series are. I'm trying to look, but while I find the person who asked the question, what are your favorite themes that have been presented in One Piece so far?
Sorry, could you repeat the question? You just cut out a little bit at the end.
Oh, it's Discord being Discord.
Yeah.
It is. What are your favorite themes represented in One Piece so far?
Right. Okay. We keep going back to Skypiea, huh?
Yes, as we should.
It's everything that Luffy bringing the bell encapsulates. Freedom, dreams, the improbable dream, hope. Why it can be so difficult to confront cynicism, especially in large, seemingly insurmountable forces like the bar scene. Or just anyone who's been told that their dream is worthless, but that as long as it isn't impossible, there are times that you may fail. Like, it doesn't mince words about that. There's gonna be failure. There's gonna be some things that you can't do, but never let that temper your idealism and optimism and ability to dream and achieve these improbable things. So everything to do with that, dreams, freedom, all that stuff with Skypiea. But something more recent in the story is that idea of, well, a couple things. So in post-war, the stuff that Shanks says about you can cry, but move forward. And then also just the idea of, no, me and Luffy promised, and I can't see him now. Because that is so encapsulative of the series as a whole. I called it heart over reason. Lots of people say that to me as well. It's so true. Things that we may look at as illogical or silly or dumb, these are hardcore principles that these characters value and adhere to.
Yes.
And those principles, I think, are embedded, permeating throughout the entire series. So that sort of heart over reason thing. And one more, which is what was it? In Marineford, which is, this one isn't encapsulating of the series as a whole, I don't think. But it's nonetheless one that stuck out to me so much, and it's the idea of the symbol of Whitebeard being this, having to be this symbol, having to, in that panel, like I said, inhale that moment of vulnerability because he has to harden himself and steel himself for the fight ahead, because he can't be anything other than this unflappable symbol.
Right.
And I think throughout Marineford, I'm kind of spoiling my video, which will release in a few days, for Marineford, but that's all over the place. The idea of a symbol. I think it's encapsulated in Roger, who is this symbol that we see in a certain light throughout a great portion of the series, but under the surface, we see other elements to him, and he becomes much more multidimensional. I think it can apply to Ace too. I think it can apply to the world government in a lot of ways. Garp. So the idea of a symbol, I don't think it encapsulates the whole series just yet, but it really sticks out to me.
Oh man, now that you bring up Roger and Whitebeard, there was something you said in your Sabaody analysis that I thought was really, really cool, where you moved Roger up into the upper echelon of your favorite part-time characters, I call them, in the series. The characters that we almost never get to hear of. These legendary characters that obviously their presence permeates throughout the entire story, but we don't really get to see much of them. And Roger is like the ultimate of that, where we understand what he's done. We understand that what we're chasing is what he's accomplished. But the more we find out about him, like we did in Sabaody, the more we understand just how great of a feat it was. Like how, or just how incredible a man he was. Where we meet his right-hand man, we see how incredible Rayleigh is. But we see how much respect and adoration he has for his captain. We see the like how we had that major moment in Sabaody where Rayleigh's about to tell him, if you want, I can tell you right now, right? Like, about the One Piece and stuff like that. Usopp's like, yo, let's get it. And Luffy's like, nah, I don't want any spoilers.
Yep.
No spoilers. And to me, right after that, I'm pretty sure Rayleigh gained a new level of respect for Luffy, where he was like, man, he really is like my captain. Like, he really is like Roger. And I'm glad that you gained a new appreciation for Roger after Sabaody, because I did as well. In the anime, Roger has a few more scenes that are added as filler in Logue Town and a few other areas of the series. But in the manga, you really don't get to see Roger much, especially leading up to Sabaody. So when you get those sequences with his right-hand man, and it's really, really important, because narration obviously is only as important as the individual stating it, or as like the circumstances around it. And for Rayleigh to say all of that stuff about Roger, to me, was just so... It captured how legendary Roger is. And so I'm glad you brought that up in your Sabaody analysis, because Roger is not only, like you said earlier, in regards to Whitebeard being the symbol that needs to remain strong for his sons, the individuals that look up to him. Roger is like the ultimate symbol of piracy in this series, where if Shanks is the symbol for the piracy Luffy wants to strive for, then Roger is the symbol of piracy that everyone wants to strive for. Yeah. Where it's like he represents wealth, fame, and power, what everybody wants, and the pinnacle, right, of piracy. And so Sabaody is filled with a lot of that stuff, but Roger's a really special character, and I'm just glad you brought that up. So whenever you brought up Whitebeard, I was like, oh man, I got to tell him about the Roger thing.
I just to add on to that, I love Rayleigh, by the way. Rayleigh's great.
Such a great character.
And speaking of Rayleigh and like the moment he kind of bought into Luffy, I definitely agree. I think that's the moment, and I think the end of Return to Sabaody, where he has a tear coming from his eye, looking at Luffy setting out after all he's been through. That's such a complex moment, because not only is it just he cares for him. He cares for him. He spent 2 years training him, and
Yep.
he's seen his struggles. He's seen what he's come through, what he's overcome, and his dreams, and he just cares for him. But he clearly sees Roger in him, and
Right.
it brings back such memories of that era, those years they spent together. So there's two really cool layers to that moment, and it all comes together really beautifully.
Now that you bring up Return to Sabaody, dude, that arc means so much to me on a personal level. Volume 61, when my first go around in college, which is, it just covers from, I believe it's chapter 594 to 603. So it's like the end of post-war, heading into Return to Sabaody, and then a little bit of the beginning of Fishman Island. So it's a volume that has a lot of greatness in it, but I've gone through Return to Sabaody so many times that, to me, it's an arc that captures so much of what makes One Piece so special, because it's like Oda could have come back from the time skip in so many other ways, but he came back from the time skip in like the most Oda way possible, where you introduced the fake Straw Hats, which to me is such a cool concept, right? Having the fake Straw Hats, and in the anime they're actually voiced by each other, which
I heard
is
that.
really, really cool.
Yeah.
And I love how he does stuff like that. But it's just like the moment you said with Rayleigh, with Luffy saying, I'm gonna do it, Rayleigh. I'm gonna become the king of the pirates. It's such an emotional scene, such a powerful scene. Finally getting the straws together after all this time. The Kuma moment. What did you think about the Kuma moment? And the reveal in Return to Sabaody. I thought that was a huge, huge twist.
Yeah, because I think Kuma is one of the most interesting hooks in the story.
Agreed.
He's an interesting character because a lot of the things that intrigue me about him are not really to do with his personality or psychology or much of anything outside of his relevance to the plot. Like, I want to know all about why he became what he became, Dr. Vegapunk. And then only towards sort of the end of where I guess post-war and Return to Sabaody, did we actually get some proper like characterization for him, where he's like,
right,
where it's outright stated what his plan was. So he's someone I was theorizing about from the beginning of Return to Sabaody. Sabaody. Once he sent Luffy away, and Luffy remarks upon, "Oh, I had a nice cushion to land in Amazon Lily." It just struck me as a strange thing for someone who genuinely doesn't want the Straw Hats to succeed to do. Because in that moment, what did Luffy want them to do? Run. We are going to die. Which is, by the way, a great amount of maturity from him. That's not something he would have done earlier in the series. So that just struck me as strange. Like, what's going on with that? And the more we get fed through details, we hear from Doflamingo in Marineford. We hear from Eva about him and in Impel Down. I just had an idea that him being a revolutionist, it wasn't a huge shock, because I think I theorized on it. I fixated on it a lot, and kind of put together like, maybe this is a guy who just the last vestiges of his humanity, whatever might be going on with him, he just wants, this world is not what he wants, and he wants to do what he can to try to overthrow that, and Luffy is the path to that, and maybe that's why he did that. So just to have that confirmed, and for Luffy to be shown as this a hope for another additional character, to add to his catalog of characters he's a hope for, in a way. It was really satisfying. It was really gratifying. I think Kuma is really interesting for the plot, and I'm glad that he was substantiated in terms of his mindset. And I really look forward to learning more about where he came from, hopefully, more specifics about the Revolutionist Army. But I really like him.
Oh, man. Yeah, I'm so glad you feel the same way, because Kuma, coming off of that Sabaody moment, like you said, where he separates them, and you're starting to question, like, wait a minute. There's something not lining up here. And then, of course, we get the answers to that, like I said, post-war, heading in, and then in Return to Sabaody, we had the clear-cut think he's even defending the Sunny.
Yeah,
There at the end
yeah.
as well, and it's like, man, Frankie meets up with him, and it's like, yo, what happened? Like, it's final order here, and it's like, it's really really incredible stuff, and so now that we talked about our return to Sabaody, to wrap things up here, which thank you very much for spending time with me here, man. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you.
We're gonna have a few questions here, both reflecting on the journey and about what you think will happen here in the future. So one of the ones about you reflecting on the journey and how you felt initially is Brandon King brings up a very interesting question where he says, what did you expect in terms of tone and theming going into the series? And looking back, were you correct on what you were expecting?
Just given I knew so little about One Piece, outside of the art, I'd seen spreads here and there. I'd seen volume covers, because it's impossible not to on Twitter.
Right.
But that is all I had to go off of, and just based off that, I felt it was a series that wasn't afraid to be silly, to not take itself seriously. It felt optimistic. It felt lighthearted, and it felt idealistic. And I think mostly that's pretty correct. I do think that as the series goes on, Oda plays around with darkness quite a bit. Return to Sabaody, that is, to me, Sabaody, the end of Sabaody. That is a turning point. Like, Luffy is at his absolute lowest. I couldn't save any of them without knowing the context of what Kuma did. And with the context also of him saying in his flashback that I will make it so that no one will leave me again, and literally all of them leave him. That is just the lowest of lows, it feels like, until Ace dies. But so I think that Oda, I was mostly correct in that, but I thought lighthearted, whereas I think Oda I ultimately think One Piece is a series that will end in optimism, dreams, freedom, protecting your dreams, camaraderie, connections, all that sort of thing. But I think it's gradually gotten darker as we've gone on. Mm-hmm. The shadow has been much darker in the past 150 chapters or so, to accentuate the light. And so I do think that maybe lighthearted isn't the best adjective for it, but I do think that it's overall super idealistic, super optimistic, and that in spite of many dark things that may happen, I think my prediction is that it'll always end in a celebration, reflecting Luffy as a person.
I love that answer, and I couldn't agree more in regards to at the end of the day, no matter how low we get into the lowest point that we could potentially get into the series in regards to Luffy again, in regards to, like you said, back in post Marineford, we got to see him whenever he woke up, after losing Ace, and he has that moment, one of the most iconic moments in the series, one that I know that I saw that you really loved as well, where he says, "I still have my Nakama." I feel like that really captures One Piece, where Jinbei is just drilling in his head, like, listen, you may have lost this, but don't forget about the things you still have. And I feel like going back to what you were just saying, no matter how low of a point these characters get to once again, that is something that's always going to resonate, is going to be those moments of positivity, right? Those moments of like, okay, where it's going to be a reflection of, like you said, I love what you said in Amazon Lily, when you compared Luffy to the sun, in regards to, the sun rises, there's both a dusk and a dawn, right? And it's as long as it rises again, then we know that the next day will be worth living. And I feel like Luffy captures that very well, where it is, he, just like you said, he really does feel like the embodiment of the sun in that regard. Similar to, I know you've only played the little bit of the franchise, but he reminds me a lot of Estelle from Trails, where it's like this a character that really feels like they embody the sun, and Luffy really does. And like whenever I heard you say that in your Amazon Lily announcement, I was like, yo, That's perfect. It really does fit the king.
Yeah, I think, and I think that's been there for ages. In
Yeah.
Skypiea, I think in my Skypiea review or Jaya, around there, um, him ringing the bell, despite him like it's a literal opposite. He's a silhouette. He's a shadow to Cricket in that iconic spread, right? But that's very much the sun rising in terms
Right.
of dreams, freedom. Skypiea was enveloped in this torrential storm by NL, and Luffy was the sun to have it disappear. So he's been that for ages, and I don't expect that to stop.
Yeah. And when it comes to uh, the way that he embodies that, it's just I think back to all the different moments in the series, just like you said with the Skypiea moment, and it's just he really is a character that no matter how dark it gets, they can always rely on Luffy, and as long as he is him, both pun intended and no pun intended, um, then everything will be all right. And I think that's something that's really special about his character. But looking another question reflecting on the journey comes in from Subra, where the second part of this question, which I just think is a question very difficult to answer, but he says, for both of you, which is the most unforgettable moment of One Piece until Marineford? Like when he says unforgettable, in parentheses says, when you thought this is it, nothing can match up to this. Like it's this is really really special stuff. So like the most unforgettable moment up to Marineford. I know there's a lot of them. I'll let you go first. If you want me to go first, I can go first.
I was going to ask you to go first.
Okay, I got you.
I need to think.
I got you. Yeah, I got you. So for me, it's difficult because, like you said earlier, I have a lot of moments that are small moments that mean a lot to me. One of those small moments is there's a moment in Skypiea when the characters are having a party.
Oh, yeah.
You remember the party scene?
Yep.
And everything's just in the manga specific, and in the anime too. But in the manga, everybody's just shadowed out. They're having a great time, and that just captures the Straw Hats so well. They're in the middle of a quote unquote enemy territory, in an island that is in a completely different realm than they are, and they're just having the time of their lives in this place. And that just always represented One Piece for me, where that's like one of the smaller moments that I've always loved. The most unforgettable is so hard because Jaya, Skypiea, and Water 70's Lobby were so key in like the path I've taken as a person since I've read those arcs, that it's like it's hard for me to capture just one in pre-time skip for that. But God, People's Dreams Never End is a super special moment, and everything surrounding that. Luffy ringing the bell, that what it means to be a captain scene with Luffy and Usopp at the end there. I Want to Live is one of the most powerful scenes I have ever experienced. Still in my top 5, potentially top 3. I'd have to think about it, but favorite scenes in the entire series, just because of how much it means to me personally. Mm-hmm. And Whitebeard's death is chapter 576, titled Edward Newgate, is to this day the most epic thing I've ever experienced. Like it's one man at his absolute rawest, and we just, and in terms of what it means to him as a character, and from an entertainment standpoint, how powerful that moment is, just it's incredible. But if I just had to pick one, People's Dreams Never End truly did change me as an individual, and so I feel like, in terms of unforgettable moments, that is when it really, really like changed me. But I Want to Live is like the unforgettable, this is my favorite series moment, just for me personally. So I guess I would pick those.
Okay. Beautiful answers, by the way. A lot of overlap. I a couple I want to actually draw attention to that aren't my favorite, but were very personally resonating for me, for different reasons. But we haven't talked about it a ton, but I'm a big fan of Drum Island.
Oh, me too.
Yeah, Drum Island's really great, and the cherry blossom and the whole conclusion of the arc, and
So good.
it's not one of my like top 5 moments, but it's one I adore, and it was when I realized like I'm testing out this Twitch thing, streaming it, my experience. It's been fun. There's been some great highs, but like when I streamed that, I think I fell in love with the idea of chronicling every step of my journey. Like,
Right.
I think I committed then because it was just such a great experience. It was great storytelling. Chat was awesome. It was a great place for me. So that's a big moment for me. I do just love that bar scene in Jaya.
Yeah, man.
Luffy ringing the bell, maybe number one. Obviously, I Want to Live is amazing. There's a moment a few chapters after that where I can't even describe the moment for you, but or I can, but it's hard to place it because it's so I think personal and random. But there's a moment where the Usopp fanboy I am, I was just looking. Usopp and Robin were the two characters I was most honed in on during Water 7 and East Lobby.
Yeah.
And there's a moment where Usopp just comes in out of nowhere, and there's this full page illustration, and the sun is beaming down. And
I know what panel you're talking about.
His like fingers pointing up.
Yep.
And that I basically started bawling right there. Like on my whole.
I do remember that.
My favorite character at that time.
Yep.
He is in this moment a brave warrior of the sea. Like he may not consistently be a brave warrior of the sea, and that's his journey, but he's hit it right here. Like that is his ideal, and his journey is reaching that consistently. So it was just such an encapsulation of the beauty of Usopp. So I wanted to say that one. But that includes Marineford?
Yeah, it says up until Marineford.
Okay.
So yeah.
The thing is, I have an easy answer after Marineford because I Have My Crew is my favorite chapter.
Yes.
It's my yeah.
I was gonna say that one too, but he said until Marineford.
Yeah, that's tricky.
Yeah.
That's my favorite chapter with the Shanks memorial for Ace and Whitebeard.
Yes.
Into I Have My Crew. It's just
that is a chapter. Like there's sometimes within any series you'll have a chapter that's a perfect anime adaptation. Episode 505 that covers that content is one of the best episodes in the entire series. It is absolutely phenomenal. It takes everything from like the Shanks memorial, the I Still Have My Nakama, all of that, and elevates all of those scenes. It is brilliant. But man, dude, phenomenal answers there. And I'm so glad you brought up Drum Island because I actually wanted to ask you in regards to the differences in like the manga and anime from your experience with the anime so far, because obviously I'm coming at it from anime first, then manga. And Drum Island is one of those arcs where I love that arc so much in the anime. It's not even like Arlong Park is what really made me a fan forever. Like where Baratie, Arlong Park back to back was just such a special experience that going into One Piece with still fresh to anime, I had never seen anything like Arlong Park before, and I was like, "This is the peak of this series." When I reached Drum Island, I could not believe something like that existed. Where it's like this miniature Christmas arc from episode 79 to 91, if I'm not mistaken, is the thing, and it's just such a special short arc. Like it captures so much of what makes this series so special. I've cried so many times, both on my first watch and on my rewatch, because there's so many of those small moments, like when Luffy lifts the Lopin up from the other one that's on the floor. In the anime, that hits me every single time. The Hiruluke stuff in the flashback hits me every time. Chopper's flashback is one of my all-time favorites. Luffy's incredible moments in that arc that really define him as a character, where he climbs up the mountain to save his people, save his friends. Then another character-defining moment is when he's like, "Yo, y'all aren't destroying this pirate flag, not while I'm here. Like this is a symbol of who we are," and just puts it right there. He's like, "Yo, you can do whatever you want. I'm gonna stay right here." and I'm gonna keep holding this flag. And then at the very end of the arc, when, like you said, the incredible conclusion, cherry blossoms go up, and Luffy's like, I don't care if you're a monster, come with me, dog. Like, you're my boy. And there's so many of those moments in Drum Island, so many great character interactions. It has that fantasy element I love from One Piece where he takes these previously established concepts, like Santa Claus and the reindeer, and gives it a twist here with like Rudolph and stuff, and puts that in and One Pieceifies it, and just it makes it unforgettable. And Oda's so good with art conclusions that like the another one for me, and I'm pretty sure for you too, is the Vivi scene, the Nakama scene. That's so powerful.
Yep.
But another art conclusion that, especially my first go around, and still to this day, episode 312 and chapter 430, which is the Going Merry Farewell. That one for me was like the proverbial icing on the cake, where I was like, dude, this series is something else. I couldn't believe, after everything we had gone through in Water 7's lobby, after the masterclass of Frankie, Robin, and Usopp, that we had the final masterclass of the Going Merry. It was that entire chapter always gets me when I read it and or watch it, because it's the death of a Straw Hat. It's like, this is the first time we're seeing not only a major character death in the present time, but it's happening to one of the characters we've been with longer than any other character in the Going Merry. And it's the way that the Going Merry went about her way to come rescue the Straw Hats and then die out on the sea. It was like, nah, I loved that so much. For that to be the end of Enies Lobby was like the perfect way to capture what makes that arc so special, which is that arc does not work without the previously established relationships between the Straw Hats. And of course, the thing that represents that is the Going Merry. And so the Going Merry dying, representing like what the Straw Hats were like before Water 7, and them getting the Thousand Sunny, and now this is representing their new dawn, the new era they're going to be heading into after this arc. But that Going Merry funeral really was like one of those scenes for me where it forever sold me on the series, where I was crying over a boat, man. You can't make this up. It was crazy.
Yeah. Actually, I cut myself off just getting lost in all the moments when answering that question. Mm-hmm. That's my favorite. That's the answer. That's up until the end of Marineford. If I had to pick one, it's the funeral for the Merry. It's just all that you said, all that you articulated so well. It's also that theme that I really love that Shanks verbalized of, there will be loss, but you have to cry, right. And it's very necessary to cry, right. But pick yourself back up and move on. And that's a lot of what encapsulates that. And for a boat to be, for an inanimate object to be characterized in that way it's wild. Just the way, there's a way that the chapter, as it builds up to that, really captures your emotions. As Usopp starts hearing it, like, wait, I hear something.
Yeah.
And then it keeps going more and more and more. And then he says jump, and you know what's going, you know what's happening. Yep. And then it leads into the next chapter, which is the actual funeral. It's, that's, if I have to pick one, that's probably it.
Yeah. No, and that's a really, really special pick, because it's, and I've heard a lot of people say that's also their, especially when it comes to the anime. Man, you've seen that, right? Episode 312, the anime.
It destroyed me. It was crazy.
Oh yeah, yeah, dude. Yeah. It's like they play Dear Friends, which is ending 16. They don't do endings anymore, but they played one of the endings, and it was just like, God, and no matter which adaptation I watch of that scene, it hurts, because it's just like you said, you just can't go wrong. As long as you just adapt the material, it's always going to get an emotional response. It's just, and so, man, fantastic answers. Absolute greatness. So now that we talked about the journey so far, I have a few comments that talk about your expectations for now the post time skip, which now we're in the exciting post time skip, man. It's crazy. Obviously, this is a big portion of the series. Still if depending on when the series ends, I feel like it could be little longer than the pre-time skip. I guess we'll find out where what happens whenever the series comes to a close. But it's definitely an extremely important, exciting, and an awesome part of the story. So I'm looking forward to seeing your thoughts and reactions in regards to the post-time skip. So starting us off, we're going to have Hugo, who comes in, and let me pull up the other tab here. So Hugo comes in and says, "I love you both so much. It'll sure be fun." Oh, it has been fun. You'll probably see that. It has been a lot of fun. My question is, would AJ want One Piece to be a serious story after the time skip?
No. No chance. I would want it to be the opposite. Or, no, if I'm going between two extremes, I would want it to be the opposite. To me, in my opinion, I think we've hit the lowest. I think that the 500 to 600 chapter stretch, roughly, is the lowest Luffy will go. And given that, like I said before, I think the identity of the series is so baked in idealism, and yes, there will be darkness, but rising out of it, and freedom, and dreams, and protecting that, and connections, and all of that, I actually think that we've seen the darkest the series will get, I think, and I actually think that maybe it won't go back to, like, East Blue levels of lightheartedness, even though that did get dark as well. But I think it'll be overall these 400 whatever chapters lighter on the whole than sort of 500 to 600 stretch, because a lot of Return to Sabaody is about recontextualizing this place that was this place of pain, this place of defeat, into their setting off point and one of celebration. It reframes the whole thing. To me, it wouldn't make sense for it to go darker than what we already had after that. This is like the fight back into the new world, and I do think it'll be. I think there'll be tragedy. I think there'll be a lot of darkness. I just don't think it'll get to the depths we saw. So that's my prediction, I guess. And I don't want it to be serious. I actually would rather it be lighter, a little bit lighter than it's been in the past 100 chapters or so, because I think that fits. And Fishman Island is very dark, so that kind of contradicts a bit of what I'm saying. But I mean, on the whole, Fishman Island gets into some very dark stuff. So, but I think when I look back on whenever I'm caught up, if I had to predict, I think it would be a little lighter than Return to Sabaody, Ace's death, post-war, the depths that Luffy sank.
Dude, I'm so glad that you brought that up for Return to Sabaody and the way that it recontextualizes it, because that's absolutely right. And I love that he chose that to be the first return arc, because like you said, it immediately lets us know this is still the One Piece we know and love.
Yeah.
You know, like we're not gonna go dark and broody. We're still here. We're still trolling the fake Straw Hats. You know, the Buggy, or not Buggy. I meant to say Boa. The Boa Hancock comedy is still here to stay. The Sanji Zoro stuff is still here to stay. The stuff with the interaction between the characters, with Usopp and Nami still having their time, like all of the stuff we've come to know and love in regards to our, which at that time was the first time we had seen those interactions since the original Sabaody.
Yeah.
So it's like, man, it's just such a great bring the band back together arc. It's so special. But the next question comes in, and I love this guy's name. It's Gakata Sintoki. So it's such a great name. You can ask him about what he anticipates from the story going forward. So I guess that goes in line with most previous question, but what do you anticipate from the story going forward, from this point forward, where you are? What chapter are you on Fishman Island right now?
643 or 4, something like that.
Dude, you know what's crazy about you saying that is, if I'm not mistaken, when chapter 640 came out, I think that was also around the same time when they announced Hunter x Hunter coming back. That was 2011. Really? Yeah, and so I guess it's just destiny. You know, we're doing this.
I guess so.
And around the same time, whenever because I know Hunter x Hunter at the time was in like the chairman, about to enter the chairman election stuff, where this was in the manga. Regardless, that's just side information. But yeah, go ahead. What are you anticipating from the story going forward here?
Yeah, so I just checked. It's 644. I ended off at
644. Okay.
So yeah, aside from this being a fight back, which despite Fishman Island being very dark in a lot of the core subject matter it tackles, there have been lots of Straw Hat moments, like a celebration of who the Straw Hat are, great interactions, a great chemistry between them, stuff like that. I think there'll be more of that. I think it'll be, like I said, a comeback and exploring the new world, and I'm sure there will be drawbacks, but I also think they'll be much more ready for it than they've been ready for any significant new challenge so far. In terms of character focus, I need me some Doflamingo, like, central character in an arc stuff, because Oda's been teasing that character so much. He's one of the most interesting to me. He's one of the biggest hooks. Marineford really had me thinking about his jester-like purpose, the idea of this person he's working with, who I don't know, but who he seems to have some authority over, what he did to Moria. I need there to be Doflamingo focus. I need an arc to be his arc, in a way. And I expect it to be. As well as that, in terms of characters, I expect a great deal of Buggy focus. I hope for Smoker focus. My one complaint for Marineford has been, like, literally the only thing I can think of is that I wish Smoker was used a tiny bit more. So I hope that Smoker gets some focus going forward. And then just overall, Luffy's gonna go up the gears, I imagine. I want... Because there have been some time skip stuff with the characters that we haven't talked about in the 40 chapters since yet. Robin was chilling with Dragon. Robin has learned about this thing called this boy called Joy Boy, who I have some ideas, some things cooking up. I imagine, I think that might be pretty important going forward. I think Jinbei's all but become a Straw Hat, it seems like, but we'll see. So I'd be down for a 10th Straw Hat, and I love Jinbei, so that'd be great. Oh, and one other thing is that, in terms of character stuff, Sanji's character's been hinted at, like, for ages, that his backstory that we saw in Baratie is not the full story. He's talked about his upbringing in West Blue, I think it is. Is it?
It's I believe it's in, I forgot the exact chapter, but in Jaya, it's called in North Blue.
North Blue. Okay, sorry.
Blue.
Yeah,
yep.
Yeah. So Oda has just been literally, like, as sparsely as Shanks' appearances, given us little bits of, like, a serious look from Sanji in a moment where I don't think he would usually do that. A little line about his backstory. So one thing I really want as well in post time skip is to really dig into Sanji and internalize him. And I feel like I understand what makes him tick generally, but I think there are some specifics that I don't know about that I really think will be revealed in a future arc. So I think that's going to happen, and I can't wait for it, because I've been curious about it for a long time. So those are some... I'm trying to think... That's pretty much... Oh, and I'm a huge Usopp fan, so just generally continuing his journey to be a brave warrior. I don't expect him to have huge focus, because he was one of the main protagonists of pre-time skip. So if he takes a bit of a back seat, that's okay. But I just want his journey to continue in the believable and human way it always does. And I think that's all. That's what I got for now.
Oh man, dude, so many things there that I'm very much looking forward to seeing whether you're right or you're wrong in regards to your reactions from this point forward. Because man, you've got what you're on 644, right? You said.
Yeah.
So you have quite a journey to go, which is going to be a lot of fun to experience. You read chapter 644, right? Like the...
Yes.
Or is that chapter you're on?
No, I read it. Next is 645.
You read it?
Yeah.
So you saw legendary the Red Hawk?
The Red Hawk? Wait, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm completely blanking. Yeah. 1 second.
Yeah, just on 644, chapter 644.
Okay. It's been like a week and a half. My brain.
Oh no, you're good, dude. Yeah,
Oh,
just go. Yeah.
yes, I did.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
I was like, oh, I hope I didn't spoil him.
No.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. No, that.
Beautiful.
Yeah. No, I love that. I absolutely love that attack. That I'll never forget coming off of the time skip. I was like, man, what type of attacks you're gonna see from Luffy from our characters, and we saw so many cool ones from all of them within the arc leading up to that point. But whenever I saw that, I was like, oh, and it was the way the panel was structured, and I was like, no, this attack is awesome. And in the anime they give it an additional flair too. I'm looking forward to hopefully a chance down the line whenever you get a chance to watch that episode. That's a good episode right there. That for the adaptation of 644, some good stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I guess another one with that one is well, I think that's sort of a similar one that you just answered, because the one I was about to ask was from Anugrah Shrestha, which says, what are some plot points or characters you'd like to see resolved or explored in future arcs? So I guess since you already talked about certain plot points, what are some more characters that you'd like to see, like right next to Doflamingo, right next to Smoker? What are some other characters you would like to see explored? And Buggy. I know you brought up Buggy earlier.
Yeah. Well. Yeah, so aside from the ones we talked about, I don't know how likely this is, because it's hard. Sometimes with some characters, they're going to come back into the story, like Shanks, Dragon, Buggy, Kobe. I just know they're going to come back. But there are others where I'm like, were they just a one and done? Am I going to see them again? So there are a couple that kind of go into that unsure category that I would love to see again. Right now in Fishman Island, we're doing this sort of victory lap around the world to see all these people that the Straw Hats have touched their lives, and them reacting to the news of them going out into to Fishman Island and then to the New World. And we've seen like the likes of Koza, we've seen Vivi, and all these places we've been. But in terms of that, I'd love to see, I don't know that it's likely, but like Wiper having another role, even if it's minor, I'd love to see him come back into it. NL, I would really like that. I love how Arlong's being recontextualized in Fishman Island. So I'd like, I loved how Sir Crocodile came back into the story. I'd like someone like NL to come back into the story, because I think I like him. I like him quite a bit. But I think there could be more to be explored there, or just more situations to see him in. And we had the cover story with his origin and all that stuff. So I think NL's prime material for that. And like, it's crazy because there are so many, this cast is huge, and there's so many characters that are interesting. Like, what have they been doing for 2 years?
Right. Right.
I mentioned Aokiji a little bit. He's a big one. And also, this one's a bit more low key, but I'm really interested in Sengoku. I think he had some really interesting stuff. I think he had some really interesting stuff at the end of Marineford, and him resigning and tossing it over to Aokiji. Like, after being very upset at what the world government were doing with the narrative, as they always do, like, what's he up to? And then of course Garp. I need to know what Garp's doing. I love Garp.
All phenomenal choices. Those all goated characters. The last question from the community, and then I'm going to ask my own last question here as we wrap things up. Last one from the community, which I think is a really, really cool question, and I'm looking forward to the two of us coming back to this down the line, and looking back on what your answer is here. Sly asks, do you have any theories on what the One Piece itself is?
I have a very specific answer to this.
Okay.
No, and I don't care what it is.
Oh, okay.
Because Luffy, there's this self-perpetuating nature to the journey that Luffy's undertaking, and he's been so clear about not wanting to know if it exists, because the nature of it being up in the air kind of is the catalyst for it kind of also likewise perpetuates the improbable dream sort of thing. Lots of people don't think it exists. He doesn't want to know it exists because that would sort of undercut his whole mantra, his whole ideals. It doesn't matter if something's improbable, and knowing if it's there, that would undercut it all. It's all futile. So I see what he says in that way. I agree, and we've talked about Togashi and Oda in terms of the detours thing. One Piece is a series of beautiful detours that coalesce in wonderful ways. At the end of the day, does it matter what the One Piece is? To me, no. I'm not going to look back on Luffy. Well, who knows? Anything's up in the air. But I don't imagine that when I look back on the journey, I'm going to think of the best moment in the series being when Luffy takes it. It'll be iconic for sure. But way overpowering that will be the journeys on the way to it. And so to me, it's just whatever it is. Whitebeard said it's real, which it's great that Luffy was unconscious during that.
Right.
Whatever it is, it doesn't really matter all that much to me. I don't have any theories about it because it doesn't make any difference to me.
I love that answer. Yeah, I really do. It's a very good answer because, like you said, oftentimes we focus so much on the end destination that the journey isn't appreciated. And I've always felt like, for me, I always talk about, especially with the To the Grand Line OST that's so iconic. I always think about the moment that we get to Raftel, more so than the moment of like the moment of like us actually seeing what the One Piece is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where we're just like, okay, if the One Piece itself is like the most insane thing, whatever it is it really as important as like the journey, the 1,900 chapters that it's taken to get to this point? You know, like whatever it ends up being, regardless. Whenever we're sitting there and we're looking at it, what actually is going to be more important to us? Is this going to be us in front of Raftel, or is it going to be like the One Piece itself finding out what it is and like being like, okay, is it the journey that was more important, or was it the destination? You know what I mean? And so I love your answer. I really do, because I feel like it captures the entire journey so well of just like how Luffy said, to us, it should be more about the detours that we've taken up until this point and not necessarily the destination, because who really cares what the thing ends up being at all? Because honestly, obviously we're all going to be extremely excited about it. I hope I don't get spoiled on what the One Piece is, right? As same thing for you. I hope you don't get spoiled on it either.
Me too.
but it's like those moments of like when we first get to this island or whenever we have like those moments, like you said, in Skypiea, ringing the bell, the Vivi farewell scene. We're thinking back to the I still have my Nakama. All those moments to me, whenever I look back on the series when I'm 60, I feel like I'm going to think back to those scenes more than maybe even what the One Piece is, unless Oda has something so crazy in store for what the One Piece is that we're all just going to be like, man, that really was a special moment, you know? But I feel like it's going to be more so because of the characters than the item itself, or whatever it ends up being, you know?
Yeah. It's going to, without doubt, be an iconic moment. It's going to be a huge moment in media history, just storytelling history. Yeah. But, you know, like, I could easily see, who knows how Oda will approach it, like you say, but I could easily see Luffy just going, cool. But like he's got such an adventuring heart that is he gonna be okay just resting, resting on his laurels and not adventuring further? Will there not be something else to chase? He in really interesting in post-war, he seems to have this additional dream, because him, Ace, and Sabo were talking about their dreams, and when Luffy would usually say, "I'm gonna be the king of the pirates," Oda cuts away.
He cuts away.
He cuts away from it. So that's bizarre and tells me that Luffy has something else, maybe something more abstract. Maybe when he finds the One Piece, he'll just go like, "Cool, now let's do that." Or I don't know. It would be very fitting. I have no idea how it's going to end, but for me, One Piece is so much more about the, like you say, the detours in the journey than the end destination. And I love that theme.
Yeah, me too.
So yeah, that's how I feel about it at the moment.
Oh man, yo. So last question. This is you can answer it if you want. You don't have to, because obviously this is gonna spoil a future video of yours. But because we always finish an AJ video with the character ranking, if you would like to share your current character ranking for us here in this video, you most certainly can. If not, I can link the following Marineford video, which you said will be coming out soon, for your character ranking there.
Sure.
It's up to you.
You know what? Why not? I'll do it. But this is the end of Return to Sabaody is what this list is.
Yes.
1 sec.
Correct. Yep.
1 sec. So I think I've got a top 25.
Oh, nice. Okay.
This is a hefty one. Just to let you know, Fisher Tiger is going to enter it eventually. I don't know when or like where, because I haven't finished the arc. Jinbei is going to be higher probably, and Shida Hoshi is going to be a honorable mention. I think she's great. But what I got right now is 25 Mihawk, 24 Rayleigh, 23 Roger, 22 Aokiji, 21 Chopper, 20 Frankie, 19 Sir Crocodile, 18 Blackbeard, 17 Smoker, 16 Wiper, 15 Jinbei, 14 Noland, 13 Buggy, 12 Sanji, 11 Brook, 10 Ace, 9 Vivi, 8 Garp, 7 Shanks, 6 is Nami, then Zoro, Robin, and Usopp is not my favorite character anymore. He is number 3, but it's very close between the top 3. Luffy is number 2, and Whitebeard is actually my favorite in the series right now.
Oh wow!
Yep.
Man, yo, that is an incredible list.
Thank you.
That is an awesome list. Like, yo, that top 3 is definitely you though. From following your journey up until this point, that is most certainly the AJ top 3: Whitebeard, Luffy, and Usopp. Man, Usopp being dethroned, but it shows how awesome Luffy's journey was.
Yeah.
From Sabaody to return to Sabaody, and also how incredible Whitebeard is, that in a 30 chapter long arc he was able to have that amount of impact.
It's stunning. It's crazy.
Series. Yeah, man, what an awesome character. What an awesome discussion we've had, man. I appreciate you for being here. Thank you so much for that. This has not only been a pleasure, but it's something that I've been looking forward to for a really long time. So to see that it surpassed everything that I had in mind for it, it's been awesome, man. So if you would like to plug, of course, your stuff, you're more than free to do so, but allow me to at the very least be the one that plugs your Twitch. Ladies and gentlemen, most certainly we're going to leave a link to his Twitch in the description box down below. This is where he does his One Piece streams every Friday and most Fridays and Sundays, right?
Yeah.
Most of them. So most Fridays and Sundays, he is up in like swimwear, reacting to the One Piece greatness. And also, if you are not into reactions, but you enjoy listening to analysis content and or his thoughts on arcs, those are up on his YouTube channel and or on his Patreon. So definitely go check those out there. But yeah, if you have anything else to plug.
I think you pretty much covered it. Thank you so much for having me. Like I said, it's something I've been wanting as well. I had a great time. It's been like 2.5 hours. It felt like 20 minutes. Thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to doing it again down the line. That'll be tons of fun. So yeah, as was said, the main thing for these, the two main things for these would be my YouTube channel, where I do these 2-hour plus long arc reviews, and on my Patreon, there's early access for the next ones for anyone interested, and Twitch, where literally every single chapter I read live. And people seem to enjoy it. And yeah, we're about to finish Fishman Island. I think it seems like we're getting towards the end of it, and I can't wait to see how it goes from then on. And outside of that, on my YouTube channel, I also have more polished, edited analysis videos that we were talking about earlier. Hunter x Hunter, but more live action stuff as well. So check it out if you're interested. But yeah, thank you so much for having me again.
Oh man, dude, it's been awesome, and like you said earlier, for us coming back to do this, dude, if you any time in the journey that you want to do this again, we can do it. But if we're gonna celebrate you catching up to the series, whenever that happens, then I would love to do this again. Whenever you catch up, and honestly, at the rate that you're going, by the time you catch up, there's going to be a lot of really cool stuff for us to talk about there. Not only that, but if you do end up doing that arc rankings potentially down the line, whenever you catch up, as a celebration, if you plan on doing that, whether it be on your Twitch and or on your YouTube, we'll make sure to plug that as well, because that is something I really enjoy listening to. But I know my community loves arc ranking stuff as well.
Cool.
And so whenever, if you do end up doing that, that'll be really cool. But I can't even imagine what the final AJ arc / character ranking is going to look like. That's going to be a fun one.
Me neither. I have no clue.
Yeah, that's going to be crazy. So we're looking forward to that. But once again, man, thanks for being here. And next time will be whenever that happens. I look forward to seeing all of the other incredible conversations we're going to have. But ladies and gentlemen, this has been it for mine and AJ's collaboration for the One Piece greatness. Thank you so much for watching. And once again, please go check out his Twitch to gain access to these reactions and see the man losing his mind in present time, and or being a clown in present time, depending on
both for sure.
Both of them for sure. So it just depends on the day and on the scenario at hand. But definitely for the viewers who are either reading this with you for the first time, or the people who are already going into it as fans, is obviously exciting stuff is on the horizon, and with the end of Return to Sabaody being the, if I'm not mistaken, that is that the video that's going up on your Patreon?
Yes, that just went up
soon?
yesterday.
That just went up?
Yeah.
Okay, so with the Return to Sabaody stuff, you guys got the character rankings before YouTube got it. So
that's true.
Shout out to our boy AJ for being so kind and for releasing that for us. So we'll see y'all next time. Have an awesome day, and thank you so much for watching.